Hi, I'm Larry Colle, 1969 St. Mike. Tonight we are celebrating the 60th anniversary of the 1961 Majors Buzzers Joint Championship seasons. The 60-61 season was special in many ways, including the hockey championships of the Buzzers and Majors, but for other hockey teams at the school, including the Bantams. Also in 1960, the arena opened with a game between the Majors and Alumni All-Stars, refereed by none other than Rocket Richard and King Clancy. Get ready tonight for many special guests from the Majors and Buzzers' storied history. And the music you heard as we came on was, of course, McNamara's band, which would often greet the Majors and Buzzers before each game. First, let me talk to you about the format. You've all been invited via the StreamYards platform, in which our moderator will interview players from that era. This is being recorded, and using that platform, we can also show rare game highlights. Afterwards, we will switch to the Zoom platform, in which you can interact with our guests and ask questions or get answers for questions that have already been submitted. That should happen around 8:30 p.m. First, I want to acknowledge the magnificent committee that put this program together. From St. Mike's staff today, I'd like to acknowledge our quarterback and leader, Stephanie Nichols, the advancement officer at Alumni and Special Events, the technical wizardry of Stephen Klein, the theater manager, and Alex Frescura, our great athletic director. The second group that's assisting with this is from the Hockey Time Machine online weekly program, which is broadcast worldwide and was recently profiled in the New York Times. Those include Paul Patsku, hockey historian and video archivist, who has provided us with these rare clips you will soon see. Also, we're helped by supervising producer Laura Evans and executive producer Glenn Dreyfus, who is facilitating this program all the way from Seattle, Washington. Finally, there's the friends and alumni of St. Mike's. There's Joe Yonder from the Double Blue Alumni Association and a longtime teacher and friend of the school. Father Jim Crothers told me once that Joe bleeds double blue. Then we have Peter Philman, the curator of the St. Michael's Wall of Fame at the arena and historian of all things St. Mike's, and myself. I also want to acknowledge that this event is being dedicated to honor the memory of those who helped me put together many hockey history celebrations over the years from 2002 until 2019. Those include Jim Gregory, who was the manager of that 61 team and the Great Leaf teams of the 70s. Dan Nicholson, a beloved teacher and hockey mentor at St. Mike's for many years. And Dr. Eugene Willis, hockey historian extraordinaire. We will all miss you very much. Now I want to introduce the moderator for tonight's show. We are very lucky indeed to have Steve Paikin, host not only of the Agenda on TVO, but a prolific author of 9 books, including the definitive works on William Davis and John Robarts. Now I turn it over to Steve, who's not only the chronicler of Ontario Public Affairs, but our very own homegrown Walter Cronkite, who's also a true hockey knight. So take it away, Steve.
Larry, that's very funny, and thank you very much for that introduction. This promises to be just an incredibly nostalgic evening, ladies and gentlemen. 184 St. Mike's players have gone to the National Hockey League. 14 have been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and we are going to lead off with one of them tonight. How's this for a start? We're going to start with, plain and simple, the greatest Maple Leaf of all time. Calder Trophy, Lady Byng Trophy, Conn Smythe Trophy, 4-time Stanley Cup champion, Hockey Hall of Fame, 1,600 games in the NHL and the WHA, 500 goals, almost 1,300 points, and it all started at St. Mike's. 4 seasons with St. Michael's College, both with the Buzzers and the Majors. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Keon. Dave Keon, this is a real tremendous honor for me, and I'm so glad that you could make some time for us tonight. I wonder if you could start by telling us how a kid out of Noranda, Quebec ends up in Midtown Toronto playing at St. Michael's. How did that happen?
Well, my parents really, I had gone to Hamilton training camp when I was 15, and they had said I could play junior B in Burlington, but that wasn't going to happen with my parents. So the next year, I ended up being on the Leaf list, and I was offered the chance to come to go to St. Michael's, and my parents were very happy that I was going to be there and live as a boarder and be taken care of. The Bazillions would be taking care of my life.
Your first cousin, some people may not know, was Todd Sloan, who played 8 or 9 seasons with the Maple Leafs and also went to St. Mike's. Was he at all influential in your decisions or in giving you advice at the time?
No, I hadn't met Todd until I went to Toronto. And then I met him and I spoke to him, and he just encouraged me to, not to give up, or, to keep working at it.
How much of the legacy of St. Mike's, and by that I mean, Ted Lindsay, Tim Horton, Red Kelly, how much of all that did you know when you got there?
Well, I knew some of it. I knew that their junior team was, the hockey program was very good. Plus, I think that it was a place where hockey players from Catholic families, they could go, and their parents knew that they would be staying in residence and there would be guidelines and rules, and you were going to have to go to school. I think when the majors got out of hockey after the Memorial Cup in '61, I think for a lot of Catholic families that was a disappointment, because they didn't have that, what's the word I'm looking for, feeling that, when their kids, if they're good enough or they were going to have a chance to play hockey, they weren't going to be in an environment that St. Michael's offered.
I want to take you back to a night in 1956. I think you're 16 years old. It's December 20th, and you score 7 goals in one game. Do you remember much about that night?
Yes, I do. The goaltender told me to, he said, if you could backhand the puck, you'd have had 3 more.
What went right that night for you, besides everything?
Oh, it was a magical night. We played really well, and I was fortunate that I was in the right place at the right time.
That sounds like typical Dave Keon modesty, if I may say. Something else must have been going well besides just being in the right place at the right time. Yes?
I was playing with good hockey players.
There you go. In the 1959-60 season, you were the OHA's #1 All-Star center. In goal was Roger Crozier. Dale Rolfe from the Barrie Flyers was on defense, as was Pat Stapleton from the St. Catharines Teepees. You were the centerman from the Majors. Chico Mackey from St. Catharines as well was on the right side, and Pierre Gagne and Vic Hadfield jointly were on the left side. I wonder, what's it like to play in the NHL with and against those guys that you've played with basically from your early teenage years?
Well, you're awful familiar with them. Back then when you played, there was only 6 teams in the NHL, so you played 14 times a year. And you became very familiar with them. But as you mentioned, we were playing junior, and we played against each other from the time we were 16, 17, all the way through our pro careers. And, I played against Stan Nikita. I played against Vic Hadfield, played against Pat Stapleton. I played against Wayne Connolly. There's Sandy McGregor and Stan and myself. So you learned, what you're trying to do, what everybody's trying to do, is get better and hopefully have a chance to make it to the NHL. And fortunately, that happened for me.
Did you play against any of your former St. Mike's teammates in the NHL?
I believe I did. I'm trying to remember now who. Yes. No, Rod Sealing was after me, and Arnie Brown was at training camp, and Rod Sealing were at training camp, I think, and we played there against them. But I played against Jerry Cheevers. He was a teammate in Junior B and Junior A. He was in Boston.
We may hear from Jerry on the Zoom feed after this is all over and done with.
Yeah.
And I will be interested in plucking some stories out of the two of you during that time. I want to ask you about a man who played goal for the Montreal Canadiens back in the 1930s. His name is Wilf Coode. What was his significance?
Cued, yes.
What was his significance in your life?
Well, when I was starting out playing as a bantam midget, he was the guy who brought minor hockey to Noranda, especially Noranda. And the mine had brought him in to set up a hockey program for the kids there. And he at that time was scouting for Detroit Red Wings. And I found out later that I saw a list, a 1952 list, where I was on some list that the Red Wings had that protected my rights as long as I played. But when I was 15, I went from midget to juvenile, and I still had a year of midget, so I could go with whichever team I chose. And I went to play for Noranda Lions, and he was the coach of the Detroit had two teams. They had a midget team, which I played on, and they had a juvenile team, which I played on. But I left there and went to play for the Noranda Lions, where Vince Thompson, who was the coach, was a scout for Toronto. But Wilf was really the first guy who organized minor hockey in Noranda, especially. He had coached the junior Canadians, and the mine, they went up and they hired him, brought him to Noranda, and he was charged with setting up a minor hockey program.
I'm going to ask our friend Glenn in Seattle, Washington, to roll a clip, and this is from very, very long ago. Glenn, it's all yours, please.
Hamlick saw something in this kid. He saw a nugget. And he gave this boy the ice time and told Davey, now you're going to make mistakes, but you're my boy, sort of thing. But he says, you got to check. And today, Davey is one of the best forecheckers in the league.
Father and Bob Golden were the biggest single factors in changing me. Possibly it didn't show then because it took a little while. But then when I came to Toronto, as he said, Punch gave me the chance to play. He gave me the opportunity, and I killed penalties and got an awful lot of ice time, and consequently I was able to develop a little more quicker than I otherwise would have.
That was Wilf Coode at first, and then you, of course, with Ward Cordell on Hockey Night in Canada. What goes through your mind, David Keon, when you see that old footage?
That's a long time ago.
I told you.
It was nice to see Wilf. Yes, they were talking about what Father was trying to impart to me about how I was going to be a better player, and it took a while for the process to sink in. And TerryO'Malley can vouch to our Father and I discussing what he wanted me to do, or what he thought I should do, and what I thought I should do. Fortunately, he won out.
Well, I think the knock on you was that you were a terrific goal scorer, but you weren't that interested in checking or taking care of your end of the rink. Was that accurate?
Yes, it was. You could say that.
I want to ask about another man who was influential in your life back then, Bob Goldham. He was your coach, yes?
Yes, Bob Goldham was our coach of my 3 years in junior. He encouraged me, gave me ice time, and was always very supportive. And I really appreciated that. He, more than anything, talked about, what it was like being a professional athlete. I think that's the biggest thing I learned from him, other than the fact that he gave me lots of ice time.
I want to ask you about something that appeared to really change in your game. I take you back to 1957-58. You had 28 penalty minutes in just 45 games. But after the next two seasons, or in the next two seasons, I should say, you had none at all. And of course, for most of your NHL career, you barely cracked double digits when it came to penalty minutes over an 80-game season. What happened in 1958-59 that made you change from a guy who got a penalty every other game to a guy who almost never got penalized at all?
Well, then I don't know what it was. I think that I can't answer, but after I learned the fundamentals of how to play without the puck, it was, you just didn't put yourself in position where, you'd take penalties. So it was all facing the person and trying to angle him off. And I was fortunate that I was fairly successful at it.
David, you never won a Memorial Cup, though, with St. Michael's, did you?
No, the year they got rid of me, they won a Memorial Cup the next year.
Does that bother you?
I would have liked to have the opportunity. We would have liked to have, we got beat in the 8th game in 1959, and I think we got by Peterborough, who went to the Memorial Cup and lost. And then we got beat by St. Catharines in the 6th game in 1960, and they went and they won the Memorial Cup. So it would have been nice to have done it. Unfortunately, we didn't. We couldn't seem to, get the job done. They did the next year though, and that was a feather in their cap.
I think some of the guys are going to be with us later in this broadcast and will tell us all about that. And Jerry Cheevers may want some bragging rights on that as well, because he was part of that too.
I'm sure he does.
Something that many people may not know is that, of course, there were two great junior teams in Toronto at the time. There were you guys at St. Mike's, but the Toronto Marlboros were there as well. What was the rivalry like between your two teams?
Oh, very, very intense. Very, very intense. The Marlies and St. Mike's was always, that was pretty intense and all the time you had to be careful because something was going to happen. And I think everybody who you're going to have today will remember the double headers on Sunday afternoon at the Gardens. That was the big thing. The first game would be at 1 o'clock. You'd play 2 straight time periods and then 1 stop time. And then we'd either start the first one and then the Marlies would play the second. We'd alternate every weekend. So that was really a big thing. And to play at the Gardens was, I remember the first time I went in there, it was, I had my mouth open. I was looking up at the grades. I couldn't believe how big the place was.
Yeah. I have heard stories that even when Marley players and St. Mike's players both ended up playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, there were still tensions and rivalries, even though you were teammates in that dressing room. Is that true?
Yes. There were Marlies and St. Mike's. Yeah, sure.
Dick Duff and Bob Bond used to pick on each other during practice, for example?
Well, that's not far-fetched.
I want to remind you of another memory and then get you once again to confirm or deny. You're at George's Spaghetti House in Toronto. You see the shaker on the table. It's actually filled with red hot peppers. But Cesar Maniego, who's your St. Mike's goalie and future NHLer, of course, tells you that it's really just crushed peanuts. And so you pour them all over your ice cream, take a big bite, and suddenly your mouth is on fire. Confirm or deny, Dave Keon?
Well, that's the story. That happened, but it wasn't at George's. It was at, I think, it was in 1956 or 57 when Cesar came down. I think it was 57. And there was a little place called Mario's. I think they had a couple of restaurants. And we were there and we were having pasta. And I asked what this was. Cesar said, "Oh, you got to put that on your pasta. It's really good." and my mouth was burning for about 3 days.
Did you ever get even with him?
No, I don't think so. No. Speaking of that, Caesar's another guy that I played against. He played in Montreal, and then he played in Minnesota and New York.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cesare Maniago.
Seems like it was all the goaltenders.
Yeah. We've got some wonderful footage as well of a 1961 exhibition game that was played between the St. Mike's Old Boys and the current Majors team. And believe it or not, Rocket Richard was the referee of this game. King Clancy was the linesman in this game. There were Old Boys currently playing for the Maple Leafs, like Dick Duff and Tim Horton and Red Kelly and Frank Mahovlich, who apparently played in that game. But again, the story I heard was that Punch Imlach, there's King and Rocket. The story I heard was that Punch Imlach threatened you with a $150 fine if you played, so you didn't. Is that true?
No, that's not true. I was hurt at the time, and I didn't. I couldn't play. So, but I was there. There's Eddie Chadwick.
How was it?
It was fine. I wished I would have been able to play, but I did not.
How much of playing for St. Mike's do you think turned you into the excellent National Hockey League player you turned out to become?
Oh, it certainly helped me. I mean, the discipline that you need to play the game, and learning the skills that you're going to need to be successful. Those all happened when I was playing junior at St. Michael's, and then finally learning what Father Bauer was trying to teach me, that it was how important it was to play without the puck. When I realized that, his saying was, unless you can score 3 goals a game, you're going to have to learn to play without the puck, or learn to check. And he had a theory of how it was done, and he taught me that, and it was certainly a big part of my helped me and become a big part of my career.
You played professional hockey till you were what, 41, 42?
42.
42. Did you ever have a fight?
Yes, I did. I had a fight with Greg Shepard. It didn't last very long. And with Greg Shepard. But I want to point out one thing that I don't think many people have touched on it about Father, is he thought how important it was for players to protect themselves. And he taught us things that you really wouldn't think about. And you incorporated those things into your game to protect yourself. How you went into the corner on an angle. When you went along the boards, you put your hand up to protect your head. Little subtle things that if they weren't pointed, some players did them naturally, and some players, it was something that they had to learn. And some of those things were things that I had to learn. And I think that they really helped me in my career.
If a fight broke out in a St. Mike's game that Father David Bauer was coaching, what did he think about it?
Well, he didn't coach me, but he was the general manager when I was playing junior, and he was less than thrilled.
He tried to dissuade, I guess, players from doing it?
Yes, he did. He did. But there was one, we were playing the Marlies at Ravenna Gardens, and Dave Chambers was playing for us, and he and Roger Colle got into a scrum, and I don't think he said anything to Dave, because Dave he took care of Roger Colle. Roger Colle was kind of a little bit of a bully, and Dave Chambers took care of him. So that kind of quieted everything down between, that was a Marley St. Mike's thing.
Dave Keon, I want to ask you one last question. It was only a little over a week ago that you turned, and I can't believe this because you look fantastic, 81 years old. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
You look great.
Thank
What
you.
occupies your time these days?
Well, I have a very, my wife bought me a very good bicycle, so I ride 6 days a week, and I try to do some stretching and stay in shape.
You look in shape. And can I tell you this as well? I happened to be talking to Ken Dryden earlier today on another matter, and I asked him, who's the greatest Leaf of all time? And he didn't pause a second before he said, Dave Keon.
Well,
So there.
Thank you. That's very nice.
We would love it if you'd stand by and enjoy however much of the rest of the show that you can, and then maybe even see you in the Zoom party afterwards.
All right, Steve. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed this.
I'm so glad. It was a joy to talk to you.
Thank you.
Dave Keon, greatest Leaf ever. But not the oldest person on tonight's program. I think that's coming up right now. We would like to introduce you, coming to us now live from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a gentleman by the name of Ed Sandford. Ed Sandford spent 4 years at St. Mike's from 1944 to 47. He was a Memorial Cup champion in 1947. He got 67 points in 27 games that year. He was the most valuable player in the league, and he's only 92 years young right now. Ed Sandford, can we have him join us tonight? There he is right there. Mr. Sandford, how are you this evening?
Steve, I'm fine at the moment. I'm very pleased to be asked to get on your show.
We're delighted to have you here. Tell us how you ended up at St. Mike's in the first place.
Well, I was at St. Leo's in Mimico going, and my dad wanted me to go to De La Salle, but my cousin, Eddie Harrison, had gone to St. Mike's the year ahead of me, and he was recommended me to go to St. Mike's for the hockey.
Good advice?
Oh, it was good. Yeah, there was organized games there and organized teams, and we played. We did well over the years.
You sure did. Let's take us back to that 1947 season where everything seemed to go so well. What stands out most in your mind about that year?
Practice. We practiced against Benny White and Harry Sukku and Rudy Miguel and Ray Hannigan, and we had more battles in practice than we ever had in the whole season. Our practices were really tough practices, but they set us up for a long run at the Memorial Cup.
You had a fairly legendary guy as your head coach, didn't you?
Joe Primo. Yeah, Joe was a great coach, and he knew how to handle kids, and he got a lot out of us. We all admired him, and anything Joe asked us to do, we tried to do.
His nickname, of course, was Gentleman Joe Primo. Did that make sense to you?
Well, I know that he was a smooth hockey player, and he forward played center on a great team that the Maple Leafs had, and with left big Charlie Conacher on one side, and I think Busher Jackson on the other. So
yes, indeed,
great team.
I'm there, Conn Smythe right there on the left with a Stanley Cup that looked a little different back in those days. I'm always interested in how you and how players who went through St. Mike's, how they felt that it influenced them to become the NHL players they did become. And we'll talk a bit about your NHL career in a second, but how instrumental do you think St. Mike's was in your NHL career?
Well, I think it was very instrumental in getting us to be where we should be. Go to school, do what you have to do, go play hockey, practice hard, play hard, and those were the things that they led us to try to do.
Now, Dave Keon just told us he didn't get into any fights. How about you?
Oh, I don't remember fights. I can't remember. I probably wouldn't have if I must have got beat when I did fight.
Now, interestingly enough, the Boston Bruins were the team that made you an offer to play in the National Hockey League. Would you have preferred to play for the Maple Leafs, your hometown team?
No, really that. Honest to gosh, I wanted to go to college. I wanted to go to St. Michael's College after I graduated from high school. And but the Bruins came along and offered me a job. The war was just over. My dad was saying that things will be quiet, and if you have a hockey job, why don't you give it a try? And then if it doesn't pan out, you can come back home, go back to school if you want.
What did you love most about playing for St. Mike's?
Oh, I had seen the junior team play. My dad had taken me to games back in the 30s. So we kind of got a like for their double loose feathers. And it was always a great school. Everybody talked about it. So I was very happy to be a student and to be there at that school.
You had a very nice career in the National Hockey League. How did you enjoy that?
Well, no, my career was nothing at all. We had a few problems. We just got started when I cut my Achilles tendon and lost a year and a half, and it took quite a while to get back. But then we did finally get back playing a lot better than we had been. So we finished out in Detroit. But no, my life was a happy life there.
But I think you had, 8 seasons in the NHL?
9 seasons.
9 seasons. Okay, that's 9 more than I had. So you can't tell me that you didn't have a good go of it.
Yeah. Well, I was traded to Detroit, and for a while I was going to play with Howe and Lindsay. But then here, again, I got hurt. I got my knee banged up, and I had to wear a brace. And Jack Adams, the owner, didn't like that very much, and he thought I should be shipped out to Chicago, which he did do very shortly after I got rehabbed.
What was it like to play in the old Boston Garden?
Oh, it was a great place. I had not even seen the Garden when I played my first game there. And the first night we got in it and played, the ice was about a quarter of an inch thick, and we were going through right to the concrete. And most of us had our skates to be resharpened. So my introduction to the old Garden was not a very good one, but it over the years you got used to what you had.
Mm-hmm. Who were your best buddies on those old Boston Bruins teams?
My best buddy was Fleming McKell, the fellow I played with at St. Mike's. Red Kelly, who I played with at St. Mike's. We never got to play together as pros, but Ray Hannigan, who went to St. Mike's and later became a priest, was another one of our good buddies, and I was friends with those boys for most of my life.
Now, one of the things that was so interesting about your career is that after it was over on the ice, I gather Milt Schmidt gave you a call and said, "Come on back. We think we got something that might be of interest to you." Tell us about that.
Well, that was an interesting thing. I had got out of hockey, and I was working for an investment firm in another business that I enjoyed very much. And Milt had an opening for a timekeeper, and asked if that would be of interest to me. And I talked to my wife about it, and she said, "Whatever you like." So I said, "I think I'll do it." It gets me back into hockey. I love to watch them, and it so happened to be that Bobby Orr was coming up that year, and you can see what Bobby did for hockey in Boston. So I was with him when that happened, and I had about 30 years in there, which I enjoyed very much. You
did that for 30 years?
I did, as a part-time job, yes.
Terrific. Didn't one of your kids do it as well with you?
Well, my youngest, or my oldest boy, played college hockey and played a little semi-pro, and then got into a business. And so when he was working, I got him to come and give me a hand, and I showed him what he had to do for the job. And so when he got strong enough and knew what he wanted to do, I thought I'd retire, which I did do, and he took over.
You obviously saw a lot of tremendous hockey players come through the Boston Garden over those years. Who's the best player you ever saw?
Yeah, everybody said Bobby Orr, and I think they're right. Bobby had terrific ability to change speed, and he seemed to know where everybody was on the ice. I don't know how we saw them, but he was in a class by himself without any doubt.
Mr. Sandford, I got to ask you one more question, which is, at 92 years old, you seem in phenomenal shape for a man of your age. How are you doing it?
I don't think I am in great shape. But I think one of the things I took care of myself pretty well, both on and off hockey. And I just follow a routine. Take, if it's good for you, take it. If it isn't, don't touch it. And I've been very lucky. God has taken care of me.
That's a wonderful thing. We're delighted that you could spend so much time with us tonight, and we hope you'll hang around for whatever the rest of the program you can for.
Steve, my sincere thanks to you for the invitation.
Not at all. The great Ed Sandford from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Well, the beat goes on now as we continue this nostalgic night of St. Michael's hockey history. And we want to now celebrate something, the 60th anniversary of which is taking place not that long from now, May the 5th. Less than 5 weeks from now, it'll be 60 years to the day since St. Mike's won its last Memorial Cup. And there's the team, and look how jubilant they are. It was a 6-game series, a victory over the Edmonton Oil Kings, and the games weren't here, as had been the custom. This series took place out in Western Canada. So it was a long haul for the folks to get out there and get the job done, but that they did. And we have 4 members of that championship team who are with us right now. So let's introduce Dave Draper, Barry Mackenzie, TerryO'Malley, and Andre Champagne. Dave Draper, 4 seasons at St. Mike's. He comes to us tonight from Burlington. Barry Mackenzie, 2 seasons with the Majors. He's on Manitoulin Island right now. God's country to be sure. TerryO'Malley, 4 seasons with the Majors. He joins us from Saskatchewan this evening. And Andre Champagne, 3 seasons with the Majors, and he's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Gentlemen, hoping you're hearing me okay. How are we doing?
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Doing good.
Excellent. Okay, let's go through this. Dave Draper, you're born in Ottawa, so how did you end up making it to Toronto and St. Mike's?
Your dad. Our dad was in Ottawa, and Bruce and I, Michael, Pat, we were in Ottawa.
Bruce, of course, was he your twin brother?
Yes.
Who I guess I should say, just for those who don't know, tragically died of leukemia at only age 27. So did not have the hockey career he deserved, did he?
No, and he was a good one.
All right, let me find out from Andre. You're from Eastview, which is near Kingston. How did you come to St. Mike's? Where's Andre? Did we lose the line to Tulsa? Okay, well, let's see if we can get that back. In the meantime, we'll go to Barry and Terry, both of whom are from Toronto, I think. So your path was a shorter one. Terry, tell us how you got to St. Mike's.
Well, I think I owe a little bit to the Drapers. Bruce and Dave went to the same grade school I did called St. Monica's. And before that, I'd gone to St. Michael's choir school. My mother wanted me to be a choir boy. The 4 lads were there. But I didn't want to be it. I wanted to play hockey, and I started to hang out with these guys and another fellow named Roger Nielsen, and they were going to St. Mike's. So I whined to my mother that I wanted to go to St. Mike's where the Drapers went. And she said, well, you want to go? You had to line up. So we went down, we lined up with about 500 other kids. I get just before the door, and this guy in a black sedan comes out, big burly guy. And he says, we're not taking any more applications. Well, the guy I went with, he says, we didn't line up all this time just to get turned away. So we snuck in the basement and came up through the door. And I handed in my application. How'd you get in here? The guy was there, the same guy. I said, oh, we just got lost. So he took our application and I was accepted. And the strange thing was my first coach was Father David Bauer. So it moved from there.
It moved from there. Barry Mackenzie, how about you? How did you make it to St. Mike's?
Well, when I was 14, I had tuberculosis. And I spent 9 months and 1 day in the sanitarium and was told I could never play hockey again. And about a year and a half after that, they let me back on the ice. And I played for the Weston Dukes Junior B team. And somehow Father Dave must have heard that I was somehow not a bad hockey player. And I got a call in the middle of the summer of 60 saying, would you be interested in going to Notre Dame? I mean, to St. Mike's. And I thought, St. Mike's is school my option was Marley's with Turk Broda, and I kind of thought Turk Broda might have made me into a bit of a goon. Oh, and O'Malley says I always was a goon anyway. but I met Father Dave, and I was so impressed. And in the summer of '60, yeah, that's how I got there. The best thing that ever happened to me.
Okay. I just want to let everybody know we're still trying to work out getting Andre Champagne back from Tulsa, Oklahoma. But as anybody who knows what the past year's been like, this pandemic has been very strange on bandwidth and Zoom calls. And everybody knows what it's like to lose somebody halfway through a Zoom call or a Skype feed. So we'll work on that and try and get Andre back. In the meantime, I want to find out more about this championship season that you guys enjoyed 60 years ago next month. Dave Draper, you guys went out to Alberta to fight for the Memorial Cup. What stands out now, all these years later, about that contest? There's you guys arriving. There's the plane.
Yes.
Answer his question.
Dave,
what do you remember about this trip?
Yes, we went to let me see.
Well, it wasn't called Pearson Airport back then. We called it Malton, I remember.
Yes.
I had to go to Malton to fly out.
Yes, we got out there, and we thought we would have a good chance to get the cup. And I think for sure the Father Bauer.
There's Cheevers.
Yeah. I think he is one of the best hockey coach, and we went to win, and we did win for the for the. So
yeah,
it was wonderful.
You guys took it in 6 games. TerryO'Malley, how dirty a series was it?
You know, it wasn't that dirty. They had a hex dial in net, and they had a Ken Stevenson, who was a pretty rugged guy that he picked up from Brandon. But, it was a big wide rink. I remember the net, you had about 3 feet behind the net. We had to figure out how to stand behind the net a little closer to the net. But we won the first 3 games. And then after we won that, we lost the next 2 games. I always remember listening to Father Bauer talk about his strategy on that afterwards. And he came in after the second game. We'd lost, so now the series is 3-2. We're leading, and he says to the reporter, "Say, well, how do you feel now that you're down 2? What are you going to do about it?" And he said, "Well, I wanted to give our players confidence," he said. So I told him, "Well, I really am worried," he said. He's worried about the Berlin Wall that's going up. He's worried about the Cuban crisis. I don't remember him saying that. They're really affecting it. But what he did, he moved us out of our apartment, our hotel, into the famous McDonald Hotel. And then the day before the final game, we took us all out for a picnic. And we ended up playing baseball and swimming. And then came back and played a pretty steady game and won the last game 4-2. So
we've got Andre Champagne back now from Tulsa, Oklahoma. So let's ask Andre. That was considered, Andre, one of the really smart moves that Father made, namely, rather than practice you guys a whole lot after the second loss, he just got you away from there, got you away and did complete non-hockey stuff. Do you remember that? Andre, have we got you back? Okay, while we're still trying to reestablish contact with Andre, let's go to Barry Mackenzie. Barry, can you tell us about that, about how Father Bauer just got you away from hockey and to clear your minds, as it were?
Well, I think that Father Dave was always kind of more into your mind than anything else, and he knew how to motivate us. And so to me, it was the biggest thing was that we just were getting away, and hockey is not the end of the world, and so let's enjoy life, and then we can get back to working our butts off and competing the way we can. And so he was just a great motivator, and there's no doubt he was the most influential person in my mind. And I think he knew how to make us work.
Andre, I think we've got you back now. Tell us how nervous you were about losing the 2 games in a row, and whether you feared that you might not be able to win the 4th game.
I felt pretty confident. We're a pretty good team. We're a good defensive team also, so just a letdown, I guess. But I felt confident. I really did.
And who were your best buddies on that team, Andre?
Well, Conlon was good. And Dave, Court, all the boys.
All the boys. This is some great old footage that we're looking at there. Dave Draper, who were your best buddies on the team?
Let me see here.
There's a bunch of them there.
Yes, Andre, Paul, Colin, for sure. Keenan, of course, he was on our with Bruce and I, and I would say for sure that Bruce Draper.
Right on. Terry, how about you?
Well, when I went to St. Mike's, I went there because of the Drapers, really. And we played Bantam, Midget, Junior B, and Junior A together. And we won the championship at every level. And Father Bauer was our coach, except for the Junior B league. But the guy I hung out a lot with was with Paul Jackson. I knew him very well. He's deceased now. And, of course, I knew the Drapers quite well as in the team, because we were local to the we came from the city and we lived at home. We didn't live in the dormitories like other players. So I was very close to them. So they were good buddies. Barry Mackenzie, of course, became a fine buddy. Now we've been together. We've played junior together, college together, internationally together. So I'd have to say Barry is he's become a fine buddy.
That's nice. I'm going to ask Glenn again, out in Seattle, Washington, to roll some footage, if he's got it standing by, of the parade that you guys got after you won. And this is really something. Again, people, if you didn't live in Toronto back in the day, we're talking 60 years ago now, yes, when a junior hockey team won the Memorial Cup, there was a big parade downtown. There's Old City Hall. There's the Cenotaph, a marching band. 10,000 people came out to welcome you guys back. There's the Memorial Cup. Okay, Barry, pick up the story. What do you remember of this day?
Just everything was wonderful. We kind of climbed the summit and had done so well that it was just another way of. And I'm a little bit dismayed that I had my hat. We all got those.
You got cowboy hats.
Yeah, and I had them, and I came to my camp today from Sudbury, and I forgot my damn hat because I wanted to have it on tonight.
Now that guy on the left of that shot there was Nathan Phillips. He's the man they named the square after. He was the mayor of Toronto back then.
The hat had St. Mike's 6061, and so anyway, it was a great feeling. It was we had a great group of guys, and it was just a wonderful feeling.
There's Nate Phillips. Now that's Jim Gregory, I guess, isn't it? There, getting the key to the city, maybe something like that.
Yep.
Andre Champagne, what do you remember about this day?
It was a great day, great honor. Go back so many years, you kind of forget somewhat, but not the parade itself. That was good, really good.
Terry, how about you?
Yeah, I remember the crowds going down in the car wearing our big 10-gallon hats and giving the speeches that were made. It was really kind of surreal because we're just young 19, 20-year-olds. and all this is happening because we won a hockey championship. So it was really kind of fun and exciting, yes.
You know, a funny thing about it all is that I'm not sure what game it was, but Sonny Osborne from Weston, he was staying at the U of T to do his exams. And he came out for game 6, I think it was, and they didn't know what happened, but he got 3 goals. And it was just, again, Father Bauer's commitment to education and hockey. And so that was kind of an interesting thing. I'm not sure which game that was, Mo, but.
That was the third game.
Third game? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You know, and also what you don't know about that, we had Jerry Cheers in net, who was absolutely outstanding. But we also had another NHL goalie that only played 10 games in the season, and that was Dave Dryden. And Dave Dryden was writing exams too, and he had to leave early because he had to go back and write exams. He had to leave early before the game was over. He was our backup goalie, and he left with 10 minutes left in the game, and we were up 4-1. And so that was it's interesting to know we had that other goalie with the team as well. You know, there's a funny story about that game. You know, we won the first 2 and lost the next 2. There was people beside us that had season's tickets, and they were moved out. I forget what the manager's name was, Lalonde or something. In any case, he put 2 young ladies in there, rather scantily dressed with see-through ribbons and, you know, see-through sweaters on. And I came off the bench in the third period, and I was sitting went up to talk with Brian Walsh, who was there was a tiered kind of platform, our bench. And Brian Walsh gives me the elbow. You see that over there? And there was Jim Gregory. He was spread eagle as he trying to block out these 2 women from distracting the players. And Father Bauer had to move down to the other end of the bench. And I said to myself, I missed this whole show.
Yeah, Terry, you were watching it all along.
I missed it.
No, you were there watching it. That's why you couldn't finish your checks.
Nice guy. He's my buddy.
Now, Barry and Terry, you both had, I think, such a good relationship with David Bauer that you followed him out to the University of British Columbia to play for the Thunderbirds there. Did you not?
Yeah. He after the thing at St. Mike's, he had this dream of the national team, and it was a no-brainer to follow Father Dave. It was a no-brainer, and as I said, it's one of the most rewarding things that ever happened. UBC, and then the national team, and as I said, he was a very influential man in my life, and I'm glad that I followed that trail.
Yeah, he when Father Bauer died, he was buried in Kitchener-Waterloo, and Diane was there, and we were all there at his funeral when he was being buried. And finally, he was buried, and Diane says to Barry, she says, "Now what are you two going to do?" Because we played all our hockey with him, and then we played college hockey and international hockey. Actually, he got us to go to Japan, and we had a career in Japan for about 7 years. And then he convinced us to go to Wilcox, which is the Notre Dame college, and we had a 25-year career there. So Diane rightfully asked, "What are you going to do now that Father Bauer's gone?"
Well, Terry, while you've got the floor, I should also ask you about the 3 Olympic Games that you played in, including in 1980 when you were 40 years old. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was, I'd come back from Japan, and we worked hard in Japan. We were fit, but I hadn't played in about a year and a half. And a fellow named Reinhardt turned professional, and another guy named Joe Grant, who played with the team, he broke his jaw. So Father phones me up. He says, "We'd like you to come back out and try." I said, "Father, I haven't played in a year and a half. These are pretty good players, you know. And he said, you'll do okay. And so I tell my wife that, you know, I was teaching at the time. You have to go out to Calgary. I have to go back to Calgary and get in shape to play for the Olympics. And I said, Father Bauer thinks they need some experience. And she said to me, experience? Does he need a relic? So anyways, I went back out and I trained and I made the team and I actually had a pretty good tournament all in all. So
excellent.
yeah, so that was my third Olympics. And we played in 64 and 68 and we had disappointments there. In 64, actually, three of us were tied for second. And because they changed the goals and for and against, we ended up out of the medals. We actually won the world championship that year, but we lost the Olympics because they were combined. In the 68, we won a bronze, and in 1980, we lost out we lost out to Finland when they scored a goal from the far blue line. So that was a real disappointment because we played the Americans seven times that year, and we'd won 3 and lost 3 and tied 1. We were both the same kind of teams, college teams. So we didn't get to meet them there. So it was it was a different path than professional.
Right. I want to ask Dave Draper about something. There's no way he's going to remember, but I remember it. Dave Draper, the last time I saw you was, I think, in 1979 in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. You were a guest speaker at the B'nai B'rith Sports Dinner because you were, I think, the general manager of the Junior A Hamilton Finn Cups, which won the Memorial Cup. Have I got that right?
Yes, you do.
Who was the big star on that team?
The big star on that team, my goodness. Let me see here.
I remember he was the number 1 draft choice in the NHL. I think Dale McCourt was the guy I'm talking about.
Exactly. Thank you.
From Sudbury.
Yes. Yeah, he was wonderful, really. And then we had a good team there.
McCourt was a finesse player and had great talent, but you had some guys who were tough as hell on that team too, if I recall. I mean, it was a team from Hamilton after all. It had to be tough.
Yes. Yeah. Let me see. I'm going to give you some.
You've got some of the programs there in front of you, I guess.
I hope.
I'm thinking, was Al Secord on that team?
Yes, he was.
Thinking he might have been.
Yeah, he might have been one of the best for sure, really.
Yeah, for sure. Andre Champagne, I want to ask you about the fact that you played 2 games in the National Hockey League for the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1962 and 63. What do you remember about those games?
It was unbelievable. You know, a little nervous, of course. Never played up there. I'm mostly a defensive hockey player, but it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. And I wish I could do it again.
How was it that you cracked the lineup? Was somebody injured that you were replacing?
Frank Mahovlich. Mahovlich got hurt. And
you filled in for the Big M.
Right.
And if I remember right, Glenn, I don't know if we've got this footage standing by, but I think we've got some vis of you playing. Didn't you wear number 18?
Correct.
And why did they give you 18, or did you get to pick it, or what?
No, they just gave me a jersey. I don't care.
And now you can say you played in the National Hockey League.
Yes.
But I'll tell you what, in that 61 series in Edmonton, Andre got a lot of big goals for us. Remember that, Frenchman?
Oh, yes.
Barry, is that what you guys called it back then, goals. Frenchman?
Among other things.
I want to ask you guys about the fact that yours was truly the last great St. Mike's team, because I think essentially they decided after that Memorial Cup victory that the season had become so involved and there were so many games, And I guess some of the priests at the school believed that it was affecting the ability of the students to get a good academic education. And St. Mike's hockey program essentially left Major Junior after that. And I don't know, Barry, why don't you start on this? What did you think of that decision to drop out of Major Junior hockey?
Well, I think we were all kind of floored by it, but that's when they made the Metro Toronto Junior Hockey League with Brampton, Whitby, Stouffville, and ourselves. There's about 5 teams, and so obviously it wasn't that great of a challenge. And we played some games against the teams from the OHL or the Quebec Hockey League, but it wasn't the greatest thing. But we moved on, and it's one of those things that you just have to adjust to. You have to live with. The school made a decision, and we live with it.
Andre, what did you think of the decision to get out of junior hockey after that?
I kind of agree with what they said, because I don't know why that's the school's decision, but I think it should have kept on. But they did come back, and then it went to Mississauga eventually.
Yep.
They did so. But that's the decision they make. We can't do anything about that. So could have probably maybe had a chance with another one. Who knows? We had a lot of good guys coming out of the junior B team too. Deneen and what have you. So anyway, that's the way it was. I wish we could have kept going, but I ended up going Neil McNeil after a year. Then I went to Toronto Marlboroughs, my competitors. But it all turned out good. So
we should just say for the record that the St. Mike's left the OHA in 1961, and then the Metro Toronto Hockey League after 62, and then they were out of it for 35 years. They returned to the OHL in 1997, and then Eugene Melnick bought the team in 2001, and then moved to Mississauga in 2007. Became the Mississauga St. Michael's Majors. Terry, how about you? What was your view of that decision to basically get out of major junior hockey?
Yeah, well, I knew Father Bauer pretty well, and he was ambivalent about it. He knew that that year we played 105 games, went right through to May, and we had grade 13 exams at the time, which was tough. Everything, when Sputnik went up with Russia, they changed the curriculum in Ontario. You had to do 3 sciences, 2 maths, and or 9 courses. So it was tough to get your grade 13 and still play junior hockey. So he was, in one sense, he realized that. In another sense, he felt that this was a tradition with the school that if they worked at it a little better, they could have gotten through it. So I didn't like the decision, but it was what they made at the time. I think they were streaming more academically, and they thought that the hockey was too professional at the time for a junior and for a high school.
Yeah. I think today we'd say it is what it is.
Yeah.
That's the expression. Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for joining our little show here this evening. I want to thank Dave Draper and Barry Mackenzie and TerryO'Malley and Andre Champagne for joining us from all over North America. And Barry, I'm going to remind you that before we went on, you offered to invite me to your camp on Manitoulin Island, because I got one there too. And provided the Premier lets us out of our homes and the lockdown ends, I will happily come and hoist a glass with you this summer.
Make sure you do. Okay, and I'm gonna put your name into my Facebook, or what, I don't do Facebook, but into my phone. So make sure that I would love to have you come.
We will make that happen, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. Great to see you all.
Dave and Andre, nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
Same.
Thank
That'll
you.
be good. All the best.
Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure. Well, the nostalgia continues here, and the one name that we have heard more than any other this evening is where we're going to go next. Father David Bauer. He was the guy, he was the heart, he was the soul, he was the brains, he was the guts of St. Michael's Majors hockey back in the day. And we have somebody here who just happens to share his last name. EJ Bauer, come on in here and tell us, where are we finding you this evening?
Hey, Steve, good to see you. Thanks for having me on. I'm up on the West Coast on Lake Huron in Bayfield.
Bayfield. Okay,
Yeah.
terrific. Let's start with the obvious. How are you related to Father David Bauer?
He was my uncle.
So your
And,
father was?
So my dad was Ray. And so, of course, there were 11 in the family. And they all played, even the girls. I had aunts that played for U of T in the 40s. So if they weren't playing hockey, they were figure skaters or tennis players. But academics was definitely something that was very much a focus.
So Bobby Bauer of the Boston Bruins, the famed Kraut line. He was an uncle too then?
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Porky and Milks, of course, Kitchener boys. They all arrived. Bobby arrived first in Boston. But before he went there, I mean, my dad played with all the brothers in Waterloo. And Bobby and Frank and Gene, they all played. And they actually won cups at St. Mike's. And then Bobby, of course, went on to play a career in Boston.
Now, Father David Bauer, of course, died way too young. He was only 64 when he was stricken with pancreatic cancer. So can I start with this? How well did you actually know him?
Well, I saw somewhere today that they were talking about the next lockdown, and they said, it sounds like wait till your father gets home. And Father Dave, basically, he was the lockdown king. So there was my mom, wait till your father gets home. And then there was always wait till Father Dave gets here. So,
and what did that mean? What did it mean when you said wait till Father Dave gets here?
Well, he had a way to discipline us in a different way than my parents. You know, I have to say, like, there's 83 first cousins on the Bauer side. And he was actively involved in everybody's life for the most part. As difficult as that would be to balance what he was doing. But everybody had a personal relationship with him. And I know in our particular family, my dad, Patsy and Ray, he definitely was a focus on our education, and whether we were playing sports or any wrong tracks that we might be going down, he would basically straighten it out.
Well, you know, I'm kind of, the journalist in me wants to find out more about that. Like, was he a guy who would spare the rod and spoil the child, or quite the opposite?
No, I think, well, he spent a long time with us. There were different times where you would get the quiet shoulder, and he would just say enough to have you walk away trying to figure out what he said, and he left enough with you to think about to find your way. But as Barry and Terry were on, and Ricky Noonan and some of them, you know, there were some late night discussions that would definitely have straightened out anybody that was going down the wrong track.
Okay. Did you have conversations with him about his time at St. Mike's?
To some degree. I mean, not so much as a player. I mean, the story goes, you know, Bobby turned pro, and, you know, Father Dave was coming up, and he was as gifted as his other brothers, but they all admired Bobby. And, you know, you can't win 3 Lady Bings and scoring title in the NHL with your line mates 2 years in a row, a couple cups, and not be influential in not just your circle of friends, but your own siblings. So I think they admired Bob, and they followed in his footsteps. But, you know, Father Dave was drafted and they had an eye on him at 15, and he was a pretty good hockey player.
Well, he was the captain of the majors, was he not, in the 40s?
Yeah. And Ted Lindsay and he in 43, 44 were brought in as imports in Oshawa late in the playoffs, and they were kind of pretty instrumental in winning a Memorial Cup there.
Mm-hmm. Now, the story I heard was, and you can obviously confirm or deny or perhaps amplify on the story, was that he got, even though he was an extremely talented hockey player, he got to a point in his life where he saw less relevance in playing a game, going to the movies, playing another game, going to the movies, and he heard a higher calling. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I think, Steve, growing up in the Bauer household, I was named after my grandfather, and the focus on education was very much number one. Athletics was as well. My grandfather played in the early 1900s, ball and hockey, and he knew how instrumental it was for developing, discipline, character in boys and girls growing up. And he really promoted the balanced education with sport. And so I think when Father Dave went off to camp, what I didn't say earlier was that at 15 he was drafted, and my grandfather really wasn't impressed that he was heading to Boston. And so some discussions took place, and the agreement was that he would come back, he'd be allowed to go to camp, come back and get his education. He would go to St. Mike's. And I think he came back from camp that year, and he had his eyes opened. He was quite young, 15 years old. You can imagine what it's like today. But at 15, the lifestyle wasn't quite maybe where he thought it was in a sheltered small town of Waterloo. And so he started to have more global, far-reaching things other than just hockey. And I think it was because of his father's influence on his life, and that was a big, the time, certainly the 40s, 50s, the war, all those things had a major impact, I'm sure.
Well, and of course he was the the inspiration behind the Canadian Olympic program as well. Did you guys ever talk about that?
Yeah, it's I think again, Bobby coming back out of Boston, coming back, being instrumental in, with the Dutchman team. My dad was involved with those teams, either funding or GMing them, and hockey was spoke of quite a lot, but education was as well. And I think through the 50s, 40s and 50s, we knew in our family, through my parents and extended family, we knew, the Bauer family knew that you couldn't send amateurs to play the professionals. And so the thought of a national team, the thought of a permanent team, you have to remember the senior hockey guys were holding down jobs. They, had families, they had kids, or they were in school. So to balance all that it was very, very different at that era.
Did he ever see anything inconsistent in leading a good Christian life, so-called, and doing what sometimes has to be done in order to win hockey games?
I honestly believe that, he loved to play tough. He was the quarterback of the football team at St. Mike's, and he loved football more than he liked hockey. He always used to say if he had bigger hands, he would have played in the CFL as the quarterback. But he loved a tough game. It had to be a clean hit, had to be heads up. I think he instilled in many of the players, even my nephews or my cousins. We're all taught growing up how to take and receive a hit, going into the corners, heads up. But it was a respect. It was the discipline of the game. And so he didn't really care much for the dirty part of the game. And I think most of the players, I would say all the players, understood that about his game, the discipline he expected. And somehow he evoked that leadership quality that players they would go into battle with him. They would go to war for him.
I asked Dave Keon this question, so I'm going to ask you as well. Dave Keon told us earlier tonight he got into one fight in his 20 plus years in the NHL and WHA. One fight. Do you know whether Father Dave ever dropped the gloves?
I don't think he ever did.
We know, we see all the evidence everywhere about his hockey acumen. Did you ever see him acting as a priest?
Constantly, every day.
What does that mean?
Hockey was just a vehicle. you know, the game was to build character. It was part of growing up, getting your education, having something to fall back on. He wasn't against pro hockey. He was against pro hockey without a plan B, not a plan Bauer, but a plan B. And that was generally an education, something to fall back on. And he instilled that in everybody. And I think he wasn't one that, you know, as a Catholic priest, he wasn't trying to convert anybody. And there were many, I mean, Jim Gregory, they used to nickname him the Pope when he would go over to the gardens, but it was always because he was on a mission from Father Dave. But he lived a life through example, and he didn't care what you believed as long as you believed and were good to your fellow man. And he definitely would intrigue your mind. If he saw somebody struggling, he had a way of pulling that person out of the crowd, talking to them. And, you know, it didn't matter whether it was a head of state or somebody driving a Zamboni or Olympia machine or the guy shining the shoes on the street. I mean, he had the ability to, when he was speaking to you, you knew that you were the only person in the room.
Now, St. Mike's has put more than 6,000 kids through their hockey program. I mean, it's been one of clearly the most successful junior hockey programs in the history of the country. And I wonder, have you ever thought about what St. Mike's hockey would have been like if Father David Bauer didn't come along?
Well, you know, I think he definitely was part of it. And I think the 61 was the marquee because, you know, hockey was turning to be a business. These teams were all feeders to the NHL. The conflict was in players being poached into the league prematurely without their education. So if there was a battle or a struggle going on within St. Mike's, within hockey at that time, it's very similar to today. I mean, kids are being watched very at a young age, right? And you want them to have something to fall back on. Back then, they didn't make a lot of money, so if they did get hurt, their futures were in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm. EJ, to the best of my knowledge, there are at least 2 major hockey arenas in this country named after your uncle. Have you been to them?
Yes.
What's it like to look at the outside of that arena and see that name up there on the side of a building?
I would say for my cousins, for my kids, for Father Dave's siblings, there was, you know, a tremendous sense of pride and recognition of what he had contributed to the game. For Father Dave, not so much. He really didn't care for, you know, a name on a building, a book, a movie. None of that appealed to him. He was very quiet. He was very humble, somewhat reflective and withdrawn. He was there when he needed to be, but he had a very contemplative life as well.
I want to ask you a kind of a challenging last question here, if I can, EJ.
Sure.
And that is, you know, for a man who dedicated his life to doing so much good for others, he died relatively young. Did you ever have any conversations with him about that?
Wow. Well, I was seeing a gal, and of course, Father Dave didn't much care for the winter. And back in the day, Per Murray tried to get him to move the national team out to Wilcox, and Father Dave wasn't much for the cold. So when he was sentenced out to UBC after they pulled out a 61 out of Junior A, you know, he didn't mind the West at all. And of course, they didn't think Father Dave could get any trouble out there because there weren't too many rinks and hockey wasn't a real thing. But that changed pretty quickly. So fast forward. I was out there and my sister Barb told me, she said, I need you to go check in on FD. He's at the UBC hospital and he's not doing great. He's going through some tests and stuff. And So this was after the Olympics, and he had been diagnosed. Our family didn't know at the time, but with pancreatic cancer. And so I would go see him every day, and this went on for 2.5, going almost 3 weeks. And I think there were times where he didn't want to talk, and there were other times that he would want to talk. And this particular day, he just said, "Hey, E, you need to take my car. You need to buzz off, go up to Whistler, give me a couple days. I need to sort some things out." And so in the end, he said, "But before you go, I want to give you something." And so I said, "Well, what's that?" He says, "Hold out your hand." And he gave me a rosary. And as the rosary dropped in my hand, he says, "I know you don't know what to do with it, but maybe someday you will." And at that particular moment in time, there was a knock at the door, and these 3 little nuns dressed like Mother Teresa came in and said, "Reverend Father David Bauer?" "Yes. Mother Teresa asked us to stop in and say a prayer with you." And Father Dave's own brothers and sisters didn't really know he was in the hospital. So the news traveled around the world. Father Dave traveled around the world, but his faith was evident in everything that he did.
EJ, that's a phenomenal story. Thank you for sharing that with us and the rest of your memories of your uncle and keeping his legacy going. We're really grateful you could join us tonight.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having us. And I know, we had a lot of different hockey teams and players and everything go through the house over the years. And, the one thing that I remember, and it just rings so loud and clear, is if there were all the players that played for Father Dave, he had an impact on every single one of them. And I think that's a real testament, because I know a lot of guys from my generation that played junior, and there weren't too many coaches that had that type of impact on them. And to the fact that they would follow them halfway around the world, like Ricky, Terry, and Barry. So anyways, Steve, thanks very much for having me. And it was a good night.
A delight. Thanks, EJ. Yes. Be well.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care. Well, we are almost at the end of our program this evening, at least this part of the program, before we move over to Zoom and do some more informal Q&A. We wanted, before finishing up, to remind everybody that, of course, the St. Mike's hockey program wasn't just the Junior A majors, which won those 4 Memorial Cups and which has been the focus of so much of our conversation tonight. But there was another team there too, the St. Michael's Buzzers. And they were a great hockey team as well. And we have 2 representatives of the Buzzers who are going to join us. And we're going to come full circle here, because Kevin Burkett is going to join us from Brampton, and he was one of them. And this other fella, who we've already met this evening, Dave Keon, also played for the Buzzers when he first came to St. Mike's. So let me start with this. How well do you 2 know each other from back in the day?
We knew each other, but not well. But I should say, last fall, Dave's grandson stayed with us through the fall while he was playing Tier 2 here in the city.
He did that.
Is he a chip off his grandfather's block?
Yes.
He is.
He's trying.
Great.
He's trying.
Kevin, why don't you talk to us about how you ended up with the Buzzers? This would be back in, 1960?
61. Well, the Buzzers was comprised of a number of players who've been brought in by the Leafs, Gary Dineen, Gary Smith, Rod Sealing, some of those players. But there was a group that had come up. We started together as Bantams and moved up through the ranks. Tommy Polonic, Mike Savage, Mike Corbett, myself, Paul Cassidy, Pete Spire. And the 2 groups kind of melded for that particular year. It was a special year.
Who was your coach?
Father Bill Conway, very special individual.
What made him special?
He was a man who, his X's and O's probably came from Father Bauer, but his ability to lead and to inspire was second to none. Just picking up on the point you raised with EJ in your last interview, which was terrific, about the tension between doing what has to be done to win and Christian values. 2 incidents come to mind. One,
we were a young team, mostly 17-year-olds, and we're playing a game in Lakeshore, mostly 20-year-olds. That particular week, it was a very rough physical game with a lot of fights and whatnot. And with Lakeshore coming back to St. Mike's on the Friday night, and our principal, Father Sheedy, laid down the law. There was to be no fights, no retaliation, nothing that would kind of besmirch the reputation of the school. And that game started, and Father Conway was a big, tall guy. He wore a fedora, probably saw in some of those pictures. And as the game went on, they were taking every advantage. And big Tommy Polonic was our toughest guy. He kept looking over at the bench. And finally, Father Conway, notwithstanding what had been laid down by the principal, took his fedora and pulled it down over his eyes. And that was the signal that we could play hit for hit and bump for bump. The other one, the Marleys, which was the Weston Dukes, Ron Ellis, Britt Selby, they had a very good team. And their tough guy, mirroring Roger Cote, who was referred to by Dave earlier, the tough guy in that team was a guy named Dave Cullenmore, number 4. And I'll never forget, to this day, it's just so vivid in my mind. Father Conway came in between at the start of the game, and he used to walk up and clap his hands. And that particular night, it was the last game of the season, regular season, against Weston at St. Mike's, a small rink. And he started, our toughest guy was Tommy Polonic. He says, "Tom, are you listening? Number 4, Cullenmore, I want him crucified." Oof. "Tommy, are you listening?" And then he went around, Mike Corbett, Ray DuPont, Emil Terrian, whose son Chris had a good NHL career. "Are you listening? I want him crucified tonight." And he was hit so many times in that game. I can tell you that when we played them in the playoffs a few weeks later, he was not a factor. And that was Father Bill Conway at his very best.
Did you find his use of the word crucified somewhat ironic for a religious school?
Somewhat shocking. But
somewhat shocking.
It got everybody's attention. Just before I move on, I should also say Rod Sealing was the only non-Catholic on the team that year. And Father Conway had a thing before big games. We had a prayer to be said before every game. And before big games, he would say, "Rod, you lead us in the prayer." And Rod would stumble around and everybody would be smirking and smiling. And as we go out on the ice, everybody would have a big smile on their face. And I'm sure that was done to kind of lighten the mood and have us go out relaxed and play better. But Rod, you lead us in prayer. And that was done before a lot of big games. So that was Father Bill Conway.
Father Bill had a sense of humor, no doubt about it. Dave Keon, did you play for him as well?
No, I played for Father Ted Flanagan. He was our coach then. He was I think he was a football coach in the 40s and 50s, and he did coach minor hockey, not the A's. He never coached the A's, but I think he coached the B's and maybe the midgets and juveniles.
And just to be clear, you started with the Buzzers before going to the majors. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
How many games with the Buzzers would you have played?
I think we played a 24-game schedule that year. And then the next year when I went to junior A, we played 56.
Whew, big jump up.
So it was a big jump up. Yeah.
What are your memories of playing for the Buzzers?
Oh, good memories. We, I guess it was a forerunner of what happened in 1961 because we won the Metro League and we beat Dixie out in 7 games. And we were going to go to play Kingston in the Eastern Division. And they told us that because of the schedule, we weren't going to play anymore. So Dixie went on, beat Kingston, and then beat Sarnia and won the All Ontario Junior B. So that was a disappointment.
We may have a couple of guys waiting in the wings who you may know from 60 years ago. Bill Crawford is here with us tonight, and Skip Stanowski is with us here tonight.
Skip.
Gentlemen, are you with us?
Bill, there's Bill.
Yeah.
There's
Here's
Bill.
Skip. Yeah.
And there's Skip. There we are.
Yeah.
My book.
Now let's find this out. Skip and Bill, have you guys remained friends over the years, for over the last 60?
Yes, we have. We play golf regularly every summer, and yeah, we keep in touch.
And Bill, what years did you play with the Buzzers?
I was the elder statesman of the team. I played 3 years. So the last year was 61, 62. My first year was with Jerry Cheevers and Butch McGee, who David knows well. And my next year I played with Billy McMillan, who went on to a great NHL career.
And who was Father Conway your coach?
Father Bill Conway was the coach every year. So I knew all his strategies.
Gotcha. And what position did you play?
I played left wing.
How'd you do?
Good. Yeah, I was primarily a checker, but I guess I got 20 goals a year. So that was average for a second line left winger. Our premier line was Gary Deneen and Rod Sealing, who went on to a great career, and Mike Corbett. And Mike Corbett, I think, was our best player. He was the most talented. You just didn't know when he was going to show up. He was very erratic in his behavior.
Now, did you ever hear your coach say, "We got to crucify these guys tonight"?
The first time I heard it was tonight. I must have had the Walkman on or something. But, now, but I do remember the game. Because the next game, a guy by the name of Rick McLaughlin, who played for Lakeshore, was after Jim McKendry, God bless him, and he had 2 broken fingers and he had a cast on, and Rick McLaughlin chased him around the length of the ice 3 times, and finally Gary Smith stepped in and gave him a straight arm and knocked him down. But anyway, it was a different show every night in the Junior B, but it was exciting. Yeah,
it's funny what you remember all these years later.
Yeah,
huh?
That's right. And the players never talked about the streak. Father Conway, at the end of January, there was only 4 league games left, and he had a meeting on a Saturday morning. Asked us all to come in, and we couldn't figure out why. Anyway, we all met on a Saturday morning, and he talked about, he congratulated us on how we were doing. But he said the real season starts in 2 weeks from now, and that was the playoffs. And the playoffs in junior hockey, as you know, is sudden death. And so he wanted us mentally prepared, just like Father Bauer. They were very mentally conscientious with us and want us to be mentally prepared, which we were.
Now, Kevin, were you and Bill teammates back in the day?
Yeah, we were. That year, we were on that same team, the Buzzer team. Just a Mike Corbett story. When Bill said you didn't know quite when he was going to show up, Bill will remember the night in Aurora where Corby had been out for a few games. He came back and he starts getting dressed, and then he's going around the room looking at everybody's bag. And Father Conway comes in and says, "What's going on here?" And he had to acknowledge that he'd forgotten his skates, and he was hoping they were in somebody else's bag. And Father Conway said, "I don't know how you're getting home, but you're not getting home on the bus."
How about Kevin? Tell him the one about the sticks.
Oh, we don't have to talk about that.
I think we do now.
Sticks, we had a trainer named Mike Maville, who is infamous. And anyway, he controlled the sticks, and Mike Corbett had, tens of sticks hidden in his basement, courtesy of Maville. And one night, I think it was both Father Bauer and Father Conway showed up at his house and insisted they could go down somebody tipped them off down the basement, and they cleaned out the sticks he'd hoarded away in the basement, which were team sticks. Anyway.
Was running his own little racket there, was he?
He was. I should also say he decided this is Corbett. He decided it would be a good idea he kind of invented the pregame skate. He thought it would be a great idea to skate and get himself warmed up. So there was a natural ice rink, Wells Hill, across from the school. He'd go over there in the afternoon and warm himself up. But one day he obviously took the edge off his blade, and he skated out for the game. He could hardly stand up. And from that day on, Father Conway had custody of his skates. He'd bring them to practice so Corby could skate. He'd bring them to games, but Mike never had control of his own skates from that day on. Father Conway had them.
Dave Keon, you looked like you wanted to add something to that.
He'll have some Corby stories, I'm sure.
No, they showed a picture of they took a picture. They showed a picture of their team, and Mike Mivell was right in the middle of it. I don't know if you saw him there.
That's right.
Let me just see if we can get Glenn to bring that picture back up again, and maybe you guys can show us some of the teammates. Let's see, Glenn, if we got that picture standing by, can we bring that one back up? There we go.
Oh, that's the year before.
Oh, this is when that's in 56, 57.
There it is, right
Jerry
there.
Cheevers and there he is. Right there he is.
There it is.
Rod Sealing.
He's in front of Gary Smith, Sealing, Deneen.
Yeah.
Miv
is right in the middle.
Yep. Who's the captain?
Gary Deneen.
Gary Deneen's the
there's
captain.
Corby in the back there.
Yeah.
There's Jimmy McKendry.
Yep.
Ricky Noonan.
Who's passed away. And there's Billy Crawford off to the far right.
Now, who's the fella in the middle with the team jacket on who looks a lot shorter than everybody else?
Mike Maville, the trainer.
Okay.
Mike Mivell.
The stick boy.
Who has a
Gotcha.
life of his own.
10 years in high school.
He liked it so much, he just kept going and going and going, eh? Bill, let me ask you this question. How important was St. Mike's to you in terms of not just your athletic, but your development as a person?
Oh, very important. I didn't recognize it at the time, but I was brought up by a single parent, and the male influence that St. Mike's had me was quite impactful in the discipline of life. And I thank them every day.
Am I allowed to follow up and ask why you were in a single parent household?
My mother ran a nursing home in the 40s and the 50s, and always wanted me to go to St. Mike's. St. Mike's was the school to go to, and I was born and raised in Toronto, so I love to play hockey. So that's where I ended up, and I've got a lot of friends from St. Mike's. You always run into people. I was a Toronto Star employee in advertising for almost 40 years. So I ran into a lot of people, and some of them remember the hockey back when St. Mike's had the junior teams. And as David alluded to, the double headers, that was a big thing that Alan Lamport allowed in the 50s.
Lampy.
Yeah, they were well attended. Yeah. They were, I guess, the only guy that didn't go into the rink on Sunday. David, maybe you know about this. Hap Ems. He was the owner coach of the Barrie Flyers, but he always sat out. He always sat out on Church Street and listened to it on the radio, because he never went to a game on Sunday.
Roger Nielsen was the same.
Was he? Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for doing this for us this evening. Go ahead, Dave Keon, if you want to finish that, go ahead.
No, I was going to say on Sunday afternoons at the double headers, they were big things. They put 12,000 people in there on a Sunday afternoon. There was nothing else going on in Toronto, so everybody went to see, the junior Canadians had come to town, Marley's, St. Mike's, St. Catharines, Guelph. So it was a big thing, and I remember the first time I went, we walked in a junior game and there's 12,000 people there. It was very exciting.
Well, as sometimes happens in National Hockey League games, after a tie, they go into overtime, and we did this evening too. We did a little bit of overtime, but I think it was worth it because we love getting these stories from you gentlemen tonight. So my job is now to throw things over to Larry Colle, who's going to finish it off for us this evening. Larry, if you would.
Yes, thank you, Steve, for a magnificent job of hosting our first part of the StreamYard session. We're going to now pivot to the Zoom session, which is more interactive, so that be more people on screen at one time can interact with people. We have many guests waiting in the wings, including Jerry Cheevers, who's trying to phone in from Florida tonight. So hopefully we can get Jerry will phone in during the Zoom part. We also have, of course, many alumni from the school and other players from the majors and buzzers. For example, Paul Conlon. We have Billy McMillan. We have Rick Noonan, who is the manager of the 61 majors team with Jim Gregory. And we have some famous alumni, including the greatest ball hockey player of all time from St. Mike's, Ted Schmidt. So we have a lot of people waiting in the wings on the Zoom session. So we're going to pivot now to the Zoom session. And so click on your links to go to Zoom. Said that there'll be the opportunity for more interaction. I'd like to thank all the guests from the first part of the show with these wonderful stories. And now going to switch to the Zoom part. Jerry Marlborough.
Yeah.
My favorite physics teacher is there.
Type in Hugh McDougall. Here, I'll do it.
Hugh McDougall's there. We used to debate about the USSR in grade 9.
Okay,
And you
Suzanne
remember,
Cooper's on.
Ian?
There's Bill McNeil, Peter Thurton.
Hi, Hugh.
I'm well, thank you. Larry, how are you?
Good.
Good,
Great to
good.
see you. Great to see you.
Lots of former students hanging around.
Yes.
And Dave Chambers has come on. I want to ask him about that fight. I didn't know he was a tough guy.
We have Len Nicholson with us. Hi, Len.
Is David on there?
Why aren't you
Dave
showing
Chambers
up?
looks like he's trying to get on.
Where's Chambers, the goon?
He says he's
Roger
connecting to
Cote?
audio. Yeah.
Come on, Roger Cote and Dave Chambers, give me a break.
There's Louis Odette.
You're not showing up.
Because Dave Keon, I can tell you, Murray McGee told me a story that fight between Cote and Chambers, when they both got kicked out of the game, had one more round to go up in the snack bar in Ravenna Rink, where I think the game took place. And Larry and David threw one punch and then instructed Brian Walsh and Butch McGee, let's get the hell out of here because this could get bad.
There's Skip. Let's see.
How you doing? How you doing, you?
I'm okay, thank you, Skipper. How are you?
There we are. Get on.
Barry McDermott.
Barry McDermott, face from the past.
Mike Duggan.
Hi, it's Ed Bridge here saying hello to Brian Belmore.
Hi, Ed.
How are you doing?
Hey,
Great,
Lisa.
great. Nice
We
to see
saw
all you
each
guys.
other at a Buzzers game a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's a while ago now.
Yeah.
Brian, great to see you.
Oh, hi, Peter. Good to see you.
Great
Good to see all these guys.
Yeah.
What a
Gary
great
Smith.
group. The best.
George Ola, are you there listening?
Oh.
George Ola.
It looks like his mic's on mute.
Yes, Stephanie. What's
This
the
video
number? Jerry's going to the screen.
Yeah, maybe unmute, George.
I see Peter Thurton there. I didn't see him at very many hockey games, but nice to see him on here.
You're the man, Hugh.
Hi, Casey.
Oh, good. Casey's is working. Okay.
Hi.
Hey, good. Talk about your dad. Your mom there?
Not with me right now. She's here.
No, okay.
Who's that?
I don't know.
Trying to get everybody's audio and video.
Hello, Jerry.
Richard Noonan.
Terry Marlborough.
Okay.
Hello there, Brian. How are you?
Terrific. Nice to see you.
You're looking fine.
Hey, yeah, enjoying the evening here.
We're turning back the clock big time.
I know.
I see Billy McNeil, a former Buzzer captain, hanging around there.
Hey, Huey, how are you?
All right, sir. All right.
I wouldn't miss this one for the world.
How you doing, Billy?
I'm fabulous. Thank you, everybody.
And there's someone calling in. I'm trying to unmute. If you're calling in a 561 area code, you can click and unmute.
Hello.
That's Jerry Cheevers.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. I'm here.
All right, we hear you.
I can't see all of Ricky Noonan, but I'd like to say hi for a former grade 12 student. Ricky Noonan there?
I'm here.
Yep.
Ricky, Jerry Cheevers.
Hey, Jerry, how are you?
Pretty good. You still out in DC?
Yeah, I'm still out. We're up in Naramata in the wine country.
Oh, that's good.
There's the axe. I see the axe on the screen.
Tommy Timbermelius masquerading as Margaret.
Always nice to see my favorite grade 12 teacher, Hugh McDonald.
Just going out to see the space station.
You remember my name about it so much as you remember the grade 12 history.
I got 10 out of 100 in that Easter exam for my essay on the building of the rink.
Hi, it's Ed Bridge here. I've just learned to scroll over and see who all is on the other screens. I see Chris Spire is with us. Hey, Chris, how are you doing? Good to see you. You're muted.
Yeah, I know.
Can anybody hear me? Yeah.
Can.
Yeah. Well, hi, everybody. What a great night.
Yeah.
Easy.
You having a good night tonight?
Gary Smith.
Hello, who's this?
Axe.
Yes.
Who? Axe, how are you? I love you.
I love you too. I love Rick. I love y'all.
If you click on the Zoom link, you can get on the Zoom.
Hey, Cheesy, how is
Zoom call with
Betty
my
Smile doing?
60 years ago.
Who?
Betty Smile.
Betty Smile's
Gary
running
Smith
in
on?
about another 2 weeks.
Okay, good luck.
Last week
Saw her
tonight.
first
Fled
race.
last time in New York.
Cheesy,
Yeah,
is
she ran
Betty
well.
going to the aqueduct?
A long time ago.
Yeah, that aqueduct. She
So
fled. She's going to break her mate. And
Hey, Casey.
that's okay. They were the best days of my life being in high school.
What a great show this is.
So
I'm not on. I can't see anyone. I'm just on the phone. So
good day.
Oh, okay.
A
Well,
little better.
Are you on Zoom?
had
his
problem or mine.
Very
I got
slow.
K-Line running on Sunday.
Oh,
First race at Golden Gate.
I thank you.
Any
Ricky and
good?
And I
Cheesy,
appreciate that and I acknowledge
you can hear me.
Thank you. Things are getting out of control.
Ricky Noonan, a shout out from Bayfield, Ontario.
Hey, EJ.
How are you?
You're looking good.
What arrived? The Christmas stuff or the Easter stuff. Oh, did it arrive today? Yes. Oh, nice. Okay.
I think this thing is kind of screwed up.
Well, the important thing is to.
Well, she sent you the link, right?
Well, thank you.
My great
Send it to your email
I
address.
appreciate
Anyway,
that.
at least I can talk to Ricky and Cheesy.
Fantastic.
We need to get some order in this.
Thank the whole crew.
Then we'll bring it back one by one.
One person.
Paul, you're turning into an alien. Paul, you're turning into an alien.
Too many people.
Hi, Laura.
Hello, everyone.
You're looking great.
Favor, and we're waiting for Steve Paikin to come back in just to organize us a little bit.
In the meantime, yeah. So
Hi, Paul.
Hi, I want to say hi to Gary Smith.
That's me.
Because how many years have I tried to get you on?
Well, it was such a special program, and my two great buddies, Rick Noonan and Cheesy, were going to be on. So, and you,
Yeah,
and Laura, so I had to come on.
Well, this is your show. I'm so glad to see you. You know,
Nice to see you, Paul.
Yeah,
Thanks
well,
for
it's
doing
great.
this.
And we met. Well, Brian Belmore's come to our lunches.
Hi, Brian.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? Hey. Good. Chris Spire, how you doing?
Gary, this rings to mind that line. I've reached a stage in my life with every event I vividly remember actually never happened.
Me too. Well, too bad we can't see Cheesy.
Ax, we've tried to forget a lot.
Yeah, we mostly forgot most of the stuff anyway, I think. But
I think the really one we should have forgot is that time we went for a drink on Yonge Street.
yes, yes, I can't forget that though. I have nightmares about it every night.
All right.
Why don't we start with Suzanne Primo? Talk about Gentleman Joe Primo, just to start with. Suzanne?
I guess Keon is off of there.
Hi, Chris.
There, I was definitely trying not to keep my my voice on mute because there was a lot of stuff going on there for a second. Hi, everybody. For those that don't know me, I'm Suzanne Primo. I'm Gentleman Joe Primo's granddaughter, and Joe, his first son's daughter. So Joe Primo Jr. also went to St. Mike's. So some of you may have met him as well as my Uncle Bob, Robert Primo, and Uncle Bill Primo. They were all St. Mike's grads as well, and Papa was involved with coaching.
Okay, I'll wait here then.
Hello, everybody. And
Hi.
I've got a picture. I put this up deliberately
Hello.
to show Papa's picture holding the Stanley Cup in 1951. I don't
great
have a
Joe,
picture of him
yeah.
holding the Memorial Cup at this as big as this at this time. Change your name?
No.
Well named.
Do you want to change your name? It's not hard.
Hey,
Chris
Peter.
Spires.
Hi, Spy.
There's Davey.
There's Spires. Chris.
Hi, Spy.
Brian, David.
Hey, David, how are you doing? Nice to see you.
Nice to
Enjoy your stories. Those were great. Little did we know how important those years were, eh? When you look back, it was when we were forming ourselves. We didn't even know it.
Peter has.
That's true.
I see that Peter has just come on. That's Peter Fire, is it?
It is indeed. Good evening,
Hi,
everybody.
Peter.
Peter?
Hi, Peter. How are you?
David.
Peter Spire.
Senior.
Good to see your face after all these years.
Well, isn't it great that we have Davey Keon and Jerry Cheevers on this show? Can you imagine
Hall of
that?
Famers.
You know how much that would cost you if Paul Pasco wasn't running this?
Axie.
Hey, Davey, great to see you.
Nice to see you. How about carrying the puck to center ice in the Forum?
Yeah, that was the highlight of my career. Then it went downhill ever since then. Then I got the great pleasure of going to Oakland.
Chris Cuthbert talked about you last week, Smitty.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I heard that. Somebody sent
Good.
it.
I'm glad you heard it. I'm glad you heard it.
Yeah, somebody sent it to me. I'm trying to think who it was.
Good.
Hey, Cheesy, I'd like to ask you a question. Cheesy? Cheesy,
Yeah.
are you listening?
Yes, I am.
Could you tell us the story of how come you played forward at St. Mike's?
Yeah, it's a very simple story. I was in my last year at St. Mike's. I don't, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Ball there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Clearly.
Sound like a commercial. Father Bauer made a deal with Dave Dryden to be the goaltender next year. My time was up. So he promised him 10 or 12 games that year. So he put me in forward. As simple as that.
Did you hit anybody? Or did anybody
Are you
hit
kidding?
you?
I went in the corner. I went in the corner once in Barrie, and all 5 forwards come in after me, and I got out of there at the last corner I saw.
Did you get any assists or goals or anything?
No, but my most disappointing part of all that, we played New Year's Day in St. Catharines, my hometown, and Roger Crozier was the goalie, and I got a breakaway on him. And I kind of thought, being a goalie, I knew what to do, and he was about 10 feet out of the net, and I shot it right in his stomach. And that's the only chance I really got, but that was
well, at least you didn't hit the post.
I got a couple of assists. I was actually on a line with Sonny Osborne and Peter Noakes.
Good. I always wondered that, and I was always too hammered to ask you.
Well, that's you know. If I would have known that, I would have told you I got a few goals.
What do you do? To push it over to?
Oh, there's you again.
Oh, no.
No, we can't see everybody.
Ricky, I can't see you.
Hi, Hacks, you're looking beautiful.
Well, I have no teeth tonight. I'm getting my teeth fixed, but other than that, I should be all right next week.
Axe.
Yeah.
How many pairs of socks do you have on?
Hey, Freddie.
Yeah.
How you
many
doing?
pairs of socks do you have on tonight?
How many what?
Pairs of socks do you have on tonight?
Oh, I only got one. I can only afford one sock. I have to change it every day.
Friends, I'm going to jump in here.
Freddie, is it snowing there?
No, we thought it was.
Spring.
Let's get the principals here, Mr. Paikin.
Yes, friends, I'm going to try to jump in here, and I'll try to play Mr. Speaker at the legislature. Order. Because
everybody pound the desk. Order, here.
We're going to try to put Jerry Cheevers in a bit of a spotlight right now so that we can find out more about him. You knew that this guy was going to have a dramatic life because on his first birthday, does anybody remember what happened? The Japanese invaded Pearl Harbor.
Right, the day I was born, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Neither did I. A day that shall live in infamy.
Jerry Cheevers is the greatest goaltender ever played in the history of hockey.
There you go.
That's got to be Axe saying that.
You know what? For everybody out there, that a lot of people thought that our junior B team might be able to beat the junior A team that year. And when everybody ever asked me that, I said, "Are you kidding? Jerry Cheevers played for the junior A team."
Well, I don't think we are crazy to play you guys. That's for sure.
Well, it'd be no contest. Anyway, somebody take over this.
Hi.
My brother Penguin would have loved to play with a lot of you guys. I know he did get a chance to play with some of them. But he got kicked out of St. Mike's, I think, for bad behavior or something.
Yeah, he then he went to Hamilton.
Owned by Detroit, he didn't get a chance to play.
All the guys with gray hair.
And I know I ran into Chris and Peter over the years who have always made me feel welcome, and I've always had nice things to say about Pat. Anyways, I just wanted to kick in.
Can I jump in with a fantastic man?
Got a really
hey,
everybody hear me? And you get a link.
Hey, Ricky Noonan, all we can see is your fan. We can't see your head. Ricky, all we can see is your fan. There you go. There you go. You're great, Ricky.
There we go.
Oh, perfect. Wow.
He's got a face.
Hi, Ricky. You're looking
Am I
good.
back in?
Ask how
And Davey has to lower. I'm the director here. You have to lower your, all we can see is you can't see your eyes.
There.
There you go.
There you go.
I can't believe the axe is giving Davey.
What's that, Ricky?
I can't believe the axe is trying to teach you.
Well, I'm the director of the show now.
Hey, Ricky Noonan, how are you?
So far, the star of the show has been Mike Maville.
We saw him before.
I'll tell you a short story about Mike Maville. He hitchhiked from St. Mike's down to the Belmont Stakes. And the year Draper won it. And he had this thing known as cherry bombs. And we went by the winner's circle, put in cigarettes, and put it in the trash can by the winner's circle. When Willie Shoemaker came in there for the winner of the Kentucky Derby, the bomb went off. It would have been today, would have been World War III. Mike Maville.
There he is. There he is.
Maville.
Great story, actually. It's there. Wow.
Is that true or not?
That's true, Ax.
What about the one at the Gardens?
Oh, come on, Dave.
Mahabali almost had a heart attack.
And Bobby Bond. But God bless his soul. You know who that was? Jim McKendry. It's the first time I've ever let it known be public, but it was Jim McKendry, not Maville.
That's true. Maville had to go and apologize. Father Bauer took him down. He had to apologize to Stafford.
That's right. That's right. Oh, God. Father Bauer and Father Conway stuck up. Hi, Rick. Wow, it's a long time since St. John's, man.
Remember our job at Emerson Zessel?
Rick, didn't we play for St. John's together? Way back.
Great CYO outfit.
Right.
I thought it was the training school.
Yeah, you bailed me out, Peter. Hi, Brian.
It was called a vocational school.
Rick, you look great.
Thank you. Thank Jameson's.
I hear you.
Hey, Ricky. Here's the FD.
EJ.
It's been a long time, pal.
Yeah, that was quite a funeral.
That was the wildest funeral I've ever been to in my life.
You should tell them what we put in the casket.
The night before the funeral, Father Dave was known to hold court, not just family, but the players and anybody else that would listen once he got on the train track. And so the night before, there was Ricky, Barry, Terry, Brother Ray, myself. Father Dave, back in the day, he'd come down in the morning and you kind of wonder what the Globe and Mail said, the Star said, but he really wasn't that interested. But he'd be shaking his loose change because he took the vow of poverty. He'd be shaking the change in his pocket and he'd say, "Can you maybe go up and grab a paper? Maybe I'll read it later in the day, but not right now." So the night before the funeral, we all emptied our pockets of our change. We put it in a dirty old sock. We had a cigar. I don't know. We basically had some Chivas, and we
he had a
moved from one corner of the pool table to the other with the cover still on it, telling one story after the other, and whoever it was at the D where you would cue up the ball had the mic. It was the talking stick, but it was Chivas. and we toasted Father Dave all night long until Ricky the next morning slid that skate with all our charm into the coffin, into his toes, and that was our send off after the third funeral.
Our biggest decision was which skate would we put in the casket, a left one or a right one. We knew he wasn't a leftist. See, Hugh, I did learn stuff, and we put the right skate in.
And I have the left.
You didn't hear the other side of that story.
Oh, Barry.
Mo.
Yeah.
Barry, go for it.
We partied all night. We're feeling a little raw in the morning, and we had to leave early. And Barry Mackenzie, all he had was his underwear on, and he put his trench coat on to go out and wave goodbye to us. And he was staying in the house, and the door slammed shut and it locked. He had to wave someone down. He had to wave someone down to go to the funeral, but all he had on was his trench coat and no pants. He's up in the choir loft watching the funeral, but he didn't make it to the funeral. It was a bad night.
If I can jump in here for a minute, it was great to see Barry Quinn here tonight. And a number of years ago, I was appearing as a lawyer before Barry Quinn. We didn't really know each other. I knew him by reputation. And in any event, after the trial was over, I asked the court constable if I might be permitted to go in and see his worship, Justice Quinn. Not about the case, but about another matter. And I was ushered into his chambers, and we introduced ourselves to each other. And he told me that I said that my brother was sitting as a judge down the street from him, and that we both knew his brother Pat. And he said, yes, I just talked to Pat on the phone last night. He's in Montreal, and he's coaching the Leafs there, and some French guy is behind the bench saying, Pat, you're a horse shit coach and your brother's a horse shit judge. So Barry must have convicted him as he was going through Ontario. But anyway, great to see you here, Barry. And just one other thing, when EJ was speaking tonight, he gave tremendous talks about Father Bauer. You should know that EJ, as he said, comes from a family of 11, and his sister, Mary Ann Bauer, now Mary Ann Hiff, is the, Father Bauer was her godfather. And all of the Hiff girls were every bit as good sportsmen as the guys in the family. And I've gotten to know Mary Ann over the years because her son, Stephen, played hockey with my son, Matthew. And as we all talk tonight and see each other, we realize that it's a great circle of life, and there's always connections with SMC. Great to see you all.
Cheers. Great to see you, Peter.
Well said.
Peter,
Well
you
said.
know,
Cheers, Peter.
The funny thing, Peter, if I can piggyback on that, is my sister Lisa.
Yeah.
Played field hockey for the national team, went to the Olympics in '84. And Father Dave, when he was playing at St. Mike's, it was the cover of the Eaton's Christmas catalog. But they took the picture in the summer, and he's standing on the cover in his St. Mike's uniform, but he's on grass. And I said, see, Father Dave, if he had been on grass, she would have been on the ice.
Before I forget, I would like to, we started a scholarship in Father Dave's name at UBC, where he started the Olympic team. And Dave Keon, David, you were the first guest we had. And that started it off in a big way, to a point where we raised close to $2 million for scholarships at UBC, Father Dave's name. And so far they're paying off. At least they made the finals last year. So David, thank you very much for starting it off for us.
Do you still have it, Rick?
It's still going.
Good, good. I'm glad it's successful.
It's very, we have so many of his players and teammates, Ted Lindsay, Cheesy, come out. One of the best we had was Howie McKenney. Howie had
Clancy
on edge.
Terry came out there, Ricky. Terry Clancy came out too.
Clancy came out, yeah. They were always great parties. Father Dave liked the party.
One thing I'll say about Ricky is that he would have all the guys. Ricky was famous for having beer in the dressing room after the game for all us old timers and stuff, and then we'd run out of beer and everything, and so everybody go home. But I knew I could stay there, and he had another 24-pack hidden in the back.
Huey, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Already recovering from some surgery, but doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
A lot of years since grade 12 history.
Oh, yes, yes, a lot.
Have you not seen each other since then?
You wrote one of the truly great answers that a teacher could ever have on a history exam. You were in grade 12 history and you were expected to write something about Otto von Bismarck. And you had sat in the window at room 217 and looked out while the St. Mike's Arena was being built. And you said to me in your answer, "Sir, I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything about Otto Bismarck, but I can describe how the roof was put on the St. Mike's Arena if you'd like to know."
Bonus points for that.
Full marks for a great answer.
Gave me 10 marks, yeah.
Dave Keon, have you not seen Hugh McDougall in all these years?
No, we've seen each other, not this past year, but 2 years ago.
Okay, good. I got to get Jerry Cheevers in here too, if I can. Jerry, do you want to tell everybody who introduced you when you were induced into the Hall of Fame back in 1985?
Father Bauer did. I was very happy to have him introduce me, I guess is what you say. And I just couldn't thank him enough, not only for that introduction, but for the weekend we had there. He spent a lot of time with my wife and kids and all my friends who was down there. He was, he was something special. I don't have to tell you guys that. He was a big part of my life, and I was thrilled to have him introduce me.
You picked him to introduce you, yes?
Yes, I did. I just thought at that time when that happened, I probably wouldn't have been there or anywhere near the Hall of Fame if it wasn't for Father Bauer. And he taught me a lot about what it takes. And if I don't know if I'm on the air here with you guys or what, or anyone's listening, but one thing that no one knows about Father Bauer, and it's how powerful the agents are in sports today. He was probably the first agent in sports. When I had a chance to go to Denver University, and I called Father Bauer, and he thought I should play pro. The Leafs were going to stop me anyway, so he negotiated my first contract. And thank God for the poverty thing in the priesthood, because I couldn't afford to pay him anything anyway. But he was the first agent, I think, in the business. He did negotiate a contract, and I might have got a little more than I deserved, but it was through him.
You know, of course, it's 60 years ago next month that you won that Memorial Cup out west. Where does that rank on your pantheon of achievements?
Well, it was, obviously the first major championship. We'd won I think every team we had in that group with we won, as Dave knows very well. The first great thing I had was winning the Junior B championship the year before, or 2 years before. I'll never forget, David, the empty net goal that Derek Holmes got. You remember that goal?
I remember it well.
Derek Holmes. There's a name from the
curved around.
I don't know if you guys knew that Derek Holmes was inducted 2 or 3 days ago in the Ottawa Hall of Fame.
Is that right?
I
Great.
think so. I think David and I have talked about that. But
They're in there now.
winning the Memorial Cup with Father Bauer was we won for one reason and one reason only, was Father Bauer. It was I'm not going to say a picnic, but it was easy to play goal in his teams because he was way ahead of his time in checking and trapping, and he knew that checking could win you a game, a series, a championship. He was that's all he professed, and you know, you have one of the greatest checkers in the history of hockey on the line with us. And, I'm sure he has talked to Father Bauer about that many times. But yeah, I do. They were two. The Buzzers victory and the Memorial Cup were two special times.
Jerry, do you recall the first time Dave Keon scored against you when you were with the Bruins and he was with the Leafs?
Yeah, I was screened.
How about you, David? Do you remember the first time you scored on?
No, I don't.
I was just going to say, I don't remember the goal, but you could bet it was a backhand.
Jerry and Steve, we have a special guest joined us now. The greatest Leaf tough guy of all time, your dance partner, Jerry Forbes Kennedy, has joined us from PEI. He's still looking for you, Jerry.
Yeah, well, I
go to
see
St. Mike's?
Forby every summer in PEI. We with bygones for bygones. There's a story to that fight too. That
can we show the video first?
Yeah, we're going to show the video first.
We're going to show the video of this first.
I started in front of the net and I backed him into the corner pretty quickly.
Here it is, Jerry. I don't know if you guys can see this on your screens here, but look at these.
I'm not on the screen. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jerry, it looks like you are trying extremely hard to make sure that the linesmen come between the two of you before anything bad happens.
It took me a couple of minutes to find the linesman. I don't know where the hell he was. But no one knows the reason for that situation. We were beating the heck out of the Leafs for, I think it was the playoffs. And Teddy Green, who was in front of the net when this altercation took place, no one knew this because it was playoffs. He had a broken hand. And him and Forby were pretty close anyway. And he couldn't fight, so I had to sort of jump in there. I just probably hacked him anyway. And one of the greatest punches Forby had to take was Eddie Johnson, my goalie partner, come off the bench and drilled him one.
Now, you guys were teammates, right?
Who was?
You and Forbes were teammates on the Bruins.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, oh yeah, sure. I love Forby. I still do. He's an incredible guy. I see him every summer at PEI.
Forbes Kennedy, if you're on here, what happened that night?
You could call me Larry.
There you are. Forbes, we've got you now. What happened that night?
Well, you wouldn't think that Sheezy and me were best of buddies, and we drank a lot of beer together. And he didn't take any pity on me that night.
Yeah.
There was.
But
can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah. Well, Cheesy and I and Eddie Johnson and Teddy Green, Tom Johnson, all that bunch, we all got around together. And I got hit that night going into the, well, Punch said, all we got to do is win one game in this building. And let's show them we're going to be around. So then he sent our line out, and I think the score was 10-0, Davey could tell you. So we went out. Cheesy hit
You never know who's going to come on.
He hits me across the ankle.
Oh, I see.
And then I went back to center. I said, what are we doing here? He said, get some trolls going. So I went back in. Once I went back in, Teddy hit me with a cross check over the nose. He's my buddy. Then I go in front of the net. My other buddy hits me. So that's how it got going.
Now, when you saw Jerry Cheevers coming at you, I mean, surely you knew he didn't really want to fight you.
Hey, nobody, I didn't want to fight him really, but it was a bad night. I didn't trust anybody. They're coming from everywhere. So anyway, no.
They were too.
Hey,
Johnny Mackenzie, God bless him.
We
Johnny
golfed
Mackenzie.
this year up in Summerside, and him and I got around together for 3 days.
Jerry, what happened with Pie Face Mackenzie?
No, I say Pie wasn't famous for fighting, but he even fought Forby that night. And he was like the third guy in on Forby. And Yeah, it was one of those games that, they were, you expect them to do that because that's what any team would do when they're down something. And Forby was the man there. I didn't want to get involved with Forby.
When's the first time after that game you guys?
No, I'll tell you what, Forby got he got a raw deal in that whole situation, and because he was suspended. Were you suspended, Forby? I think you were.
What's that?
Was Forby? I don't know if that was the game with the incident with the referee, but maybe not.
Yeah, that was the last game he played, I think.
No. We played the next night. That was on the first game of the playoffs.
But
we
I mean,
played the next night.
But Forbes was.
Remember all that going on.
Did Forbes play the next night?
Yes.
I had my gear on.
Yeah, I think so.
I thought I was going to play.
Some fan dumped a beer on your head or cracked a bottle over your head as well, didn't they?
No, they did that to Pat Quinn.
Oh,
that was when Quinn hit Bobby Orr.
That's when Pat Quinn hit Bobby Orr.
Okay.
That night.
But when I got that beer in my face, I can remember that yet. Eddie Johnson, another buddy, hanging on to me, and Eddie told everybody we'd go to the bank with Eddie said when the guy spilled beer in my face or hit me some way, Eddie said, I said to the guy, have you got any more of that beer?
Now, Forbes, after the little do-si-do with Jerry Cheevers, the linesman interceded and they skated you away, and you skated past Pie-Face Mackenzie, and then I don't know what. Did he say something to you because you took an awful shot at him at that point? What happened?
Well, look, first of all, Pie and I lived together with Detroit when we lived in Detroit with Red Kelly, and we've been friends all the way. And I was going by, and he was following me all over the place. I figure all night, so I figured I had enough. Couldn't mind my own business and keep going, but I just said I had enough. And the old arms went dead. Jim Dory said, "Give it to him." I said, "What do you want me to do? Kiss him? I can't lift my arms anymore." So anyway, I pulled him in and I hit him with my head, because be damn it if I was going to fall down on that ice. I wasn't going down no matter what happened.
Yeah.
How bad did you get cut that night, Forbes?
Forby, you'll be happy to know it's the only fight Pie Mackenzie ever won.
You know what? I'll tell you one. When poor Pie died, his daughter was working out west, and my grandson was out there teaching. And I found out that Pie died, so I phoned his wife, because Pie and I was good friends. What goes on the ice, you forget about that. Hey, you'd be punchy if you held on.
You're 100% right, Forby. 100% right.
Yeah.
Jerry, when would have been the first time that you talked to Forby about that night after the fact?
We're at the golf tournament last year on the island.
Last year, we had a nice conversation about it.
We laugh and joke over it.
Yeah.
And we still remember at the racetrack, didn't we?
Yeah, I remember seeing all the McTavishes. You and I used to go to Suffolk Downs in Boston. When you knew. Right. In fact, remember one night, Forby, if you remember, we were up in the announcer's booth. We started cheering over the air.
And you know what? We went down to the barns, and my buddy driving that night, horses from the island, he said to me, "Close that top door, swinging doors." And he took the needle out.
Yeah.
You remember that big long needle?
Yeah, I
the horse
sure
was
do.
racing the next night. And I said, "What are you doing?" I'll never forget it. He said, "If I hit you with this, you think you're Rocket Richard."
I remember that. I remember that line. Yeah.
Jerry, we've got some questions coming in on the chat, and somebody's asking, how is it that you ended up at St. Mike's in the first place?
Well, we had some pretty good Bantam teams in St. Catharines. We had a great coach in Vic Teal, and we had just beat the Marlies 2 years in a row to win the Bantam championship. And my dream was to play for the St. Catharines CPs. You know, I watched them win a Memorial Cup, and a couple of my friends played with them and everything. But it so happened that my dad was a scout for the Leafs, and he hadn't scouted anyone yet. And he was getting a little worried, so he sent me there. That's how I he talked to Bob Davison, I guess it was, and ended up going to St. Mike's,
Did Jack-
which was great.
Jack-
I mean, and Jack Martin too, right, David?
Yeah.
He was as good as hockey player as you've ever seen, and he went to St. Mike's. Him and I went to St. Mike's. I think Dave, you went the year after, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, and we were all in that junior B team. I'll tell you one thing. You talk about good teams. We had good Bantam teams, but we had a terrific junior B team. I'll tell you that. And the story goes, just to finish, they wouldn't allow us to play for the Ontario for some reason. But we had a series, Dave, against Dixie. Was that one of the best series you ever been in?
Yep. 7 games.
Wow. 7 games. And they had a great goalie in Dennis DeJardy and a little guy, Trevor Kay. Is that the right one, David? I know you know.
Trevor Kay was there, and Vic Hatfield was playing for them too.
Yeah. So
Stanfields
I
there
remember
then?
that too.
No, I don't. There might have been a Stanfield. I don't remember.
Yeah,
But,
there was, but it wasn't Freddie. It was Jack.
Okay, Jack was playing for them.
Murray Hall.
Jack Stanfield.
No.
I'll tell you a quick funny story. A quick funny story. When Jack Martin and I went there, David, Father Bauer, he figured he put together a loaded minor midget team or something, and he coached us. And our first game was against Shelton's Grocery Market, and they beat us 3-1, and that was the end of our dreams right there. Never forget, we got beat by Shelton's Grocery Market, and Father Bauer didn't know what to do.
Jerry,
we
there's
all went
another
separate ways for a year or so.
There's another question here, Jerry. Actually, this for everybody. Did anybody on the Zoom feed here play Junior A with Paul McGaffin?
No.
I don't remember the name.
I think he was before us.
He was in the 53, 54, I think.
Paul McGaffin played on the majors back when Jack Caffrey was playing. Paul McGaffin is the guy that Jerry James had on the ice and banged his head on the ice till he had a concussion.
Oh yeah.
I
don't remember the name to be truthful.
Ask Axe about when he was quarterbacking.
Yeah, I was a quarterback. Yeah, I was a quarterback for the
junior football.
The Kerry Blues. Blues.
Oh, wow. Pretty good.
And anyway, I wasn't very good.
You were great, Smitty. Don't give me that crap.
My favorite receiver was Paul Henry, if anybody remembers him from the Lakes. And then the Leafs said to me, listen, kid, we're paying your way down here and everything. We don't want you playing football, basically. But I was a better baseball player than football.
I was the field goal kicker for the Kerry Blues, and they never got a touchdown all year.
I bet they never got a field goal either.
That's what I meant. I never got in one game.
Peter, you were a lot older than Smitty and I. Peter, you were a lot older than Smitty and I.
Jerry, there's another question here. Somebody wants to know why you keep calling Gary Smith Axe.
He had that nickname before. When him and I were together all the time, it was like just Smitty. But then I don't know if he got it in pro or junior, but it had something to do with ankles.
Gary, what's the story there?
You know what the real story is? And Don Cherry says that I saved somebody from an axe murderer, and he really believes that. But it's not the true story. The real story was there was a guy named Wilbur Mouse selling papers outside of the gardens, and somebody had hit him in the head with an axe, and he had a real big indentation in his forehead. And then so Mike Corbett and I and Junior used to call each other Axe, because basically we're making fun of this poor guy. And so that's the true story.
Remember the hockey player?
He was a caddy in Rosedale Golf Club.
Wilbur Mouse. Like Corbin or Wilmer Mao.
Yeah. Caddy at Rosedale Golf Course.
Oh, that's Mike Maville talking.
Gary Smith mentioned not being allowed to play senior football, but that was routine.
No, I played senior. I did play senior football.
All of the guys who played for the Buzzers and the Majors had to play junior football rather than senior. Like Terry, you were the heart of the junior football team, TerryO'Malley, the years that I played. And it was because the Leafs were worried about injuries. So the juniors could always beat Dell, but the seniors could never beat Dell because the best athletes were on the junior team.
LSL had Nobby Workowski as the coach as well. And he
Well, as Wayne Weller could tell you, who played for Dell, we always beat Dell. And I know Wayne's on the podcast there too.
Is he?
Dave Keon, we got a question here for you. Were the Basilian priests the best hockey scouts in hockey history? Thinking of Tim Horton and others scouted by the Basilians, they deserve a lot of credit, says this questioner.
No, it wasn't the Basilians. It was usually the priests in the parishes around the country. If there was a boy who was a Catholic, they got in touch with somebody and said they've got a player here who the Leafs should take a look at and send them to St. Mike's.
Huh. There's a fella here on the feed called Dom Frasca who says there is a mystery that only Dave Keon can solve. Okay, Dom, what's the question?
I'm sure that it could. Anyway, I perhaps everyone should know here that I'm the only student in the history of St. Mike's that I arrived at St. Mike's and I never knew how to play hockey. I never skated in my life. And when I went there, I didn't even know they had a hockey team. Anyway,
is anybody else having trouble with this?
Yeah.
Very well.
Dom, we're having a problem here.
I bet Davey Keon can't answer that question.
I think you're having bandwidth problems, Dom. We're not getting you at all. Maybe you could type the question into the
I
chat.
will have the question, yes, okay.
Thanks a lot. Okay, we're going to do that. Somebody asked a question here. How many games did Bruce Draper play with the Leafs? I think the answer is 1. Anybody remember Bruce Draper with the Leafs? I think he played 1 game with them.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up here online. Yeah, 62,
There was
63.
one game in Boston. It was the only game he played. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know the circumstances, Paul?
Yeah, and because it wasn't televised, Sunday night games weren't televised in Toronto, although the theaters used to televise the Sunday night games for a couple of seasons.
It was closed circuit.
Was that David?
It was closed circuit.
That's right, yeah. And so the family got to see Bruce play. Only because of that, they could go and closed circuit and see it. I've never, so that's.
Yeah, he played 1 game versus Boston on a Sunday night, replacing Eddie Shack.
Oh, Eddie was hurt, eh?
Yeah.
Got it.
There he is.
Well, with them, great.
Bruce Draper was a great junior hockey player.
Can I ask a question there? Is TerryO'Malley still on the line or on the air with us?
Yes.
TerryO'Malley, come on in.
I'm right here. What do you need?
Jerry, cheers. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Oh, Jerry, I was thinking of you. We brought Jerry out to a banquet for Notre Dame at Calgary, and Jerry gave one of the better lines. He was starting to explain his background. He says, I was first drafted by the Leafs. And then a bunch of people in the audience started to cheer. He said, "Oh, I see we got some Leaf fans here. I'll speak slower." That was a great line, Jerry. I don't remember what else you said.
No, I think that's the last time I saw you. I don't know when that was.
Yeah, that was a
nice hearing you, Jerry. I'll say this about TerryO'Malley: when he played hockey, he could block shots with the best of them. Of course, the year we won the cup, Bob Golden was our coach, and Terry learned an awful lot from him, but he could block shots. He blocked more than I did.
Bob Golden was a big influence. And
Sure.
the thing about Bob Golden, he could really skate, but he couldn't shoot. And so he said one day, he was telling me, he said, one day I read in the newspaper, Bob Golden made his 1,000th rush tonight, 999 of which have gone nowhere. And so he decided to stay back and not go much beyond the red line and block shots. But he could fly out there. He gave me 2 hints.
Yeah, he was a good skater.
He says the guy puts his head down or he slides his hand down the stick a bit. So you looked for that and you knew the shot was coming in. So it gave you an advantage when to drop in front of it. Bob Golden was a great guy.
We have another question here for David Keon. Okay, Dave Keon, here's the question that this fellow was trying to ask before, but his bandwidth wasn't good, and so we couldn't hear it. He says, I could not skate, and Father Volpe, head of athletic, provided me with skates, and just wearing them, I could be the best skater at SMC. He told me to take care of those skates forever. I still have them. He told me that Dave Keon had left those skates at St. Mike's after he graduated. The mystery is, did Dave Keon, in fact, leave a pair of skates there? If he did, I still have them.
I don't think so. I have to take them to go to training camp.
Dom, we hate to burst your bubble, but it looks like that was just a bit of a wild goose chase.
I want you to know when I played minor midget hockey, they started to give us equipment at St. Mike's, not in Bantam, but in minor midget. And the first pair of skates I got were Frank Mahovlich's. They're about 2 sizes too big, but I wore them anyways. Put some newspaper in the toes.
We have a former member of Parliament amongst us this evening. Chris Spire is here. Judge Spire, you want to come in here and ask your question?
Who's this?
Where's Chris?
This is still on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, Chris. Got to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we've got you now.
Back in the day, Pat Quinn came to St. Mike's for half a year. He didn't get his release from Hamilton. And for some reason or other, we became pretty good pals. I was older than him, and he was 15 years of age, and the best football team of my time was De La Salle. Pat played on the defensive line, and I have never seen anybody with more preternatural strength and toughness. He was a tremendous football player, as was Terry. Now, move forward, I'm in the House of Commons, and I get a phone call one day, and we maintained a relationship, but, you know, years go by and, you know, everybody knows what happens. And he phones me and he said, Chris, can you help me? I said, if I can, I will. He said, he's, by the way, the general manager in Vancouver at the time. And he says, I got somebody from the States and we're having a hard time getting him into Canada. And you're in the government. Can you speak to the minister? And I said, sure. And I said, who is this guy? He said, a guy by the name of Brian Burke. And I said, who the hell is Brian Burke? And he said, he's somebody we want to bring to Vancouver. And I remember that, and some phone calls were made, and it happened that Brian got in maybe more expeditiously than he ought to have. In any event, I have wonderful memories of Pat, what a warm guy he was, what a tremendous football player he was, and what I think is a great leader of men. That's it.
Yeah. So we have you to thank for getting Burkett up to Canada.
No, he would have been anyway.
Dave Keon, you played with him.
I did, yeah, yes.
Want to share a story about him?
Oh, well, he played with Timmy. He and Timmy played together, and they worked well together. And the hit when he hit Orr in Boston, he got a penalty, which he shouldn't have, because Bobby did have his head down.
I agree.
And he stepped in and knocked him out, really. That might have been the first time that Bobby was knocked out. But the fans in Boston, they all took it out on Pat, but they were throwing
I
stuff.
think that Dave,
Yeah.
I think that kept him in the league longer too, because he was in the penalty box and evidently someone threw a Yale paddock lock, a Yale lock, and they hit the glass like a bullet, and he skated right across as fast as he ever skated in his life over to their bench. It was on the other side. So I think some scouts saw that and said, we can keep him around for a while.
Yeah. He was tough. He didn't fool around with Pat.
Dave,
Sure.
I was I was at that game in Boston the next night. He hit him in Toronto, I think.
No, he hit him in Boston.
Was it in Boston?
Was the first playoff game.
It was a playoff.
We
It was
lost
a playoff game because I roomed with Bobby Orr. We were staying out of town, and I had to wake him up periodically through the night to make sure he didn't have a concussion.
All right.
Jerry, did you think it was a clean hit?
I saw it from the other end, and Bobby did have his head down, and I was about to yell heads up, and it just happened so fast. And
he went
he,
the guy,
you know,
he behind the guy, and he ducked behind the guy, and he had no place to go because the boards were on his right, and Pat just came straight through.
I know exactly where it was and everything. Yeah.
It was
Hello?
my.
Oh.
What I was saying was it was the next night. I guess it was the second game of that playoff series because it was St. Patrick's Day, and the crowd at the game. I was at the game, and everyone you can walk into the arena, and there was this chant going on with 10,000 voices. Get Quinn, get Quinn. And it was really scary to think of for old Pat. And Punchy didn't dress him for that game, and it ended up there was no further ramifications. But later in life, Pat used to raise a lot of money for charity, auctioning off. He had a picture of him over Bobby Orr after he hit Orr at the blue line there. And he got Bobby to sign the autographs, and they used to auction it off at the golf tournaments and made a lot of money for charity. It was kind of a nice ending to that incident.
Jerry, do you know if Bobby ever had hard feelings about that hit?
I don't believe he did. I'm trying to think, and David probably remembered. Wasn't Brian Conacher involved in the hit too?
No, that was another time.
I remember. Yeah. Okay, that wasn't that.
No,
I don't think.
Well,
I mean,
the year before, that happened the year before.
He
Oh,
shot
it did?
he was shooting the puck out of our end, and it hit Bobby on the face. And they thought
it wasn't a hit.
They thought that Brian had shot it at him on purpose, and he hadn't. Anyway, there was a
No, I
big
didn't believe it.
there was a bench clearer that night.
Ron White has put into the chat here, that game was Wednesday, April 2nd, 1969,
Yeah.
52 years ago tomorrow.
Wow.
That's a long time ago.
I knew March 17th. When you said March 17th, I was a little early for the playoffs. But
Yeah.
it's, March 17th in Boston is dangerous in itself.
Could I tell a story about Pat?
Please, Peter, go ahead.
I was involved with the majors when they came back, and I looked after the media room, and the majors would play some games at Maple Leaf Gardens. And of course, Pat would be around for one reason or another, and he'd have this big cigar in he always had a cigar in his hand. Whether he smoked or not, I don't know. But he knew I was in St. Mike's, and he said, I wanted to play hockey for St. Michael's. I was playing football, but I couldn't play there because the Red Wings owned my rights, and they wouldn't let me play at St. Michael's, and I had to go to Hamilton. and he ended up playing in Hamilton. He wanted to play for St. Michael's. The Red Wings wouldn't let him.
I heard that.
Who's that?
He did play football.
Yes,
Oh,
he was a good
tremendous.
And
player.
Ricky Noonan used to use this as a trivia question. He says, what three NHLers played football together along with a guy who played in 3 Olympics? Could you name them?
Well, you're the-
TerryO'Malley.
Arnie Brown, Jerry Cheevers, and Pat Quinn and myself all played junior football together for St. Mike's. And I remember Pat Quinn, I met him in Regina about 15 years ago. He was doing some little fundraising event. And he said, do you remember the time you gave me shit for missing the tackle? And I look, he's about 6'3", and I'm looking up at him. I said, Pat, it must have been a weak moment.
Terry, do you remember that? And Ricky, when I was at Pat's funeral, they were telling a lot of different stories, and of course, this is it's kind of blurry, but it was Father Dave was known to be a late night caller, and he would call up Pat, and he'd be impersonating Boom Boom Jeffrey, and I don't know the storyline around it or why he would be buzzing him at that time, but maybe it was the Irish and the two of them. But
you called them discussions. We called them encounters with Father Bauer when he decided to let you have it.
Yeah,
it's a funny story when you talked about when he was dying. He was in the little hospice there where the sisters came in.
Yeah.
Well, Ricky Noonan and I were visiting him one night as he was laid out with pancreatic cancer, and all of a sudden he looks up and over the door was a crucifix. He says, Ricky, he says, move that crucifix over here. I want to see it right here. He says, I got issues with this guy, he said. So Ricky takes his shoe off, takes the chair over, and he's pounding in the crucifix so that Father Bauer could see the crucifix as he was agonizing in this pain. And in comes the nurse, the station nurse. Is anything going wrong here?
It was 2 o'clock in the morning because you had just come from the hotel.
There's Ricky with his shoe off, pounding this nail into the wall.
That's why.
But the name on Father Dave's hospital room back in the days, the old hospitals were all donated, and the name that he spent the last days in, it was Edgar J. Bauer. It was his dad's room that he had donated.
Wow!
Like built the hospital. Crazy.
Wow.
Terry, while you have the floor, there's a question here for you. It says here, at the age of 39, you were the oldest player of the 1980 Olympics. What was it like to play with great future Oilers, such as Glenn Anderson and Dr. Randy Gregg?
Yeah, it's great to have those guys carrying me. They were all young guys. I mean, I could have been their father, for God's sakes. They were 18 and 19. Well, Randy Gregg was a little older because he'd gone in through university. I think he was even a doctor at that time. But those were they were good guys. We all lived in a camp, a trailer camp that they put right by the Calgary Arena. And I joined the team later, and I hadn't really done any training for a year and a half. So I was always stiff as hell at nighttime. And we had the Russians come in, and the American team would come in and play us. And these guys couldn't sleep at night. Well, I was so sore at the end of practices that I'd have my bottle of cognac, and I stayed with this guy called Ronnie Patterson. He says, "You're not allowed to have liquor in here." I said to him, I said, "Ronnie," I said, "this isn't liquor, it's medicine." So, but in any case, I guess it got around the camp that I had this bottle of cognac in my room. And of course, these guys they'd come in and they'd wake me up. We can't sleep. So I get them all a little titch, like Glennie Anderson, a few of the guys. I get them all a little titch. They'd all go back and sleep like lambs, and I couldn't get back to sleep. So we had a lot of fun together. They were all. It was a whole group of different guys that I played with, and it was it was a challenge, but it was really fun to do it.
Jerry Cheevers, you pointed out earlier that Dave Dryden was your teammate at St. Mike's. So does that mean you knew Ken back then as well?
No, I didn't. I think he's older than Dave. He's probably Cornell at the time. But Dave came to St. Mike's that year we won the cup. He played 12 regular season games that Father Dave promised him. That's what I played forward. And then he took over the next year. Actually, I don't know if they had hockey the next year. But that was the reason. And I never knew Kenny at all. In fact, I wish I'd never met him.
Well, he was drafted by the Bruins, right?
I wish I'd never heard of him.
He was drafted by the Bruins, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, he was. He was drafted by the Bruins and then traded for a guy who I think played a handful of games in the NHL. That was it. That would have been one of the worst trades Boston ever made. Not for you, though.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I was going to say, not for you.
Yeah. A lot of things happened, but you know what? Father Bauer put me up front that year of 12 games. He didn't. I don't think he really did it so Dave could play 12 games. I think he had other alternative motives putting me up there. One being my ability to skate. I had to be a better skater, and I think he kind of knew at that time I was going to try to be a professional. And so, I mean, I had no problems with it.
Jerry, there's another story in the chat here. I think it's from Gene Ubriaco, who says, Beavers 14 and I, 16, are walking down Yonge Street, and we see a peg-leg man playing an accordion and a young girl singing for coins. Gene says, I donated $1 and said, isn't that sad? And Jerry said, yep, she's a bad singer.
I'm not so sure. Ubi would say that because he's one of the funniest guys you ever meet in your life. But
is that a true story?
Said that I can't remember that. I was 14.
Yeah.
Gene Ubriaco also was the guy that came up with the line that he never got much ice time with the Blackhawks. I think he was playing for. He said there was a spare so often. He said I used to just go and get in the trunk of the car after the games. He's a funny guy, Ubi. Hey, Dave, he could skate like the wind.
He could do that.
Oh God.
No, I don't think I really said that. But now that I think it was a pretty good line.
Yeah. John, why doesn't Ubi talk about it? Gene?
Yes.
Unmute.
How do I get on there?
You're on.
You're on. Go ahead.
Oh, good. Hi.
So you see, you have to hit chat to go on. Oh, I don't know where that button is. I know. Ooh.
Hey, can't see you.
Hey, go ahead, Gene. You've got the floor.
Somebody. Oh, but where is the button? Right there. Chat.
Bill and
so.
Yeah, we got to mute. There we go. Okay, Gene, you've got the floor. Go ahead.
Well, actually, Jerry did say that he was quite a sharp guy at 14 years of age, and the reason I donated, I was making $40 a month, so I had a few bucks, but I remember him and Jack Martin coming to St. Mike's, and to see how they've gone on, especially Jerry and the career that he's had is really remarkable. But I must say, from day one, Jerry was on the ball. He was like a Damon Runyon character when he was 14 years of age.
I used to work at the racetrack in the summer, and you learn a lot.
That's right. I remember that. Yes.
Jerry, Jerry,
you
what
were
are you
at a lot
doing
of
with your days?
racetracks before you were at a lot of practices.
Oh, I know, right?
Jerry, where do you live now, and what are you doing with your days?
in Florida. I live in Florida, not too far from David. And I like when people ask me if I play much golf and, living in Florida. And my answer usually is just once a day, because I'd like to get them, piss them off a little bit. And so I'm in a good golf group here, and have a lot of great friends in Florida. And it's great. For about 3 months in the summer, I go up to Boston. It's a little too hot here.
Oh boy, look at that.
Talking about the racetrack in St. Mike's, can I tell this quick story, because I know it's getting a little late, and we had a coach in Junior B who I think suddenly is one of the greatest coaches I ever had, was Father Flanagan. And Father Flanagan loved the racetrack. He loved it more than I did, but I was the only guy at St. Mike's with a car, and I used to park it in Loblaws, which was right next to St. Mike's. There's Loblaws there, and I had my car picked there, and there would be an announcement, Jerry Cheers, please see Father Flanagan. I said, oh, what did I do? He says, what's your last class? I said, 220. He says, canceled. I'll see you in Loblaws. And we went to the races for the day. And he come back. I don't even know if I passed that class, but we had a lot of fun. He was great. He was, he psychologically, he didn't seem like it, but no one was better than Father Bauer. But this guy, he had a way. I'm telling you, I don't know what Davey, you thought of him, but he made us play.
He did that. He's the only coach I ever had who never went on the ice.
Yeah, right.
He coached from the bench.
Yeah.
How do you run practice from the bench
I
and never
really
go on the
liked
ice?
Oh, he'd just be pointing, go over here, do this, do that. And every day in practice, the last 10 minutes in practice, we'd practice power play. And when we beat Dixie, the power play was a big part of that.
David, my only job then was to go and get him a Pepsi and a hot dog at the restaurant.
Across the road at the pool hall. At Gerard in Maine.
Ted Riverita.
Ted Riverita.
Practice.
Friends, I know it's getting late, but before we go any further, I think both Jerry Cheevers and David Keon would like to know that Red Kelly's daughter, Casey Kelly, is on this call, and Casey, can we get you in here and maybe have you talk to these Hall of Famers for a second?
Sure.
Hi, Casey.
Hi.
Oh, look at her.
Great story.
Hi, Casey.
Hi there.
Look at him.
Casey, I only have one story about your dad, and Dave was on the flight too. One of the goalies was hurt. When you guys won the cup in Chicago, Dave, I flew back on the plane next to Red Kelly that night, and I never saw a prouder person in all my life. It was fantastic, and there was shenanigans and celebration. He was just sitting there with the greatest smile I ever seen on his face. He was a classy guy. I got to play golf with him a couple of times at Rosedale. I'm glad he was a St. Mike's guy. I really am, because I'll never forget that night coming home from Chicago. Was that your first or second cup? I don't know.
Was the first one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Well, my dad.
So, anyway,
my dad loved St. Mike's. He really talked about it all the time, how much he loved it. And someone mentioned before Father Conway, and it was Father Conway that spotted my dad after he'd been cut from the majors, the buzzers, the midgets, and he was just scrimmaging on a piece of ice outside the residence. And it was Father Conway that saw him. And I guess he was assisting Father Flanagan in coaching one of the teams. And he went to Father Flanagan and said, maybe you should take another look at this guy. And so that's how my dad got his start there. And he loved it. And he talked about it all the time. And my brothers went to St. Mike's, and two of my sons were there. And I actually went to St. Mike's. I think Mr. McDougall might remember this. I was at Holy Rosary next door and in grade 8, and they did a pilot a program where we did grade 9 math while we were in grade 8. And there were just 5 girls that were chosen to do this. And we had to write our first exam at St. Mike's in a whole gymnasium full of boys. And they brought us in at the very end. So we had to sit at the front and they all saw us come in and sit down. It was kind of embarrassing. I think we created such a stir that the final exams we got to write at Holy Rosary just at the same time that the boys wrote their exams. But I think alphabetically, my name was the first in the alphabet as Kelly. And so I think I'm the first girl that was listed as being a student at St. Mike's.
Good for you.
Good story.
That's nice. Casey, do you know who your dad's favorite player was when he was growing up?
Oh, I don't know. He talked about a few, but he did say he really respected Father Flanagan as a coach and also Gentleman Joe Primo. He said that he told him that the way to get revenge was not to be in the penalty box. The way to get revenge was to score goals and assist goals and stop goals from happening. And so that was a huge influence on my dad. And I think
Really?
he really, really wanted to play. And he would say that to my sons all the time. Same thing, because one of my sons was a bit of a hothead and really loved to get revenge. And my dad said, no, even hitting too much wasn't necessary because it would take more out of you than it would out of the player that you might take them out, but you're also hurting yourself and making yourself tired.
Casey, you seeing these pictures here?
Very nice.
Who's that with your dad?
I don't know.
Anybody know who that guy is on the left?
Paul, you know.
I do. I just can't think of his name. I do know who it is. Because I'm the one that sent the photo. I even labeled it too.
Is it Ed Harrison?
I don't know.
His last name is Paul.
Oh,
last-
Bob Paul.
Bob Paul.
That's who it is. See, David Keon knows everything.
Bob Paul.
David Keon's got an amazing memory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of which, David Keon, we have a note here on the chat saying, I was in a restaurant or bar called Da Capo in Avon, Connecticut. I wanted to tell you the people in that area speak so highly of you from your days with the Whalers.
Oh, that's nice.
There you go. Who was your favorite player growing up, David Keon?
Todd Sloan.
Well, he was family, wasn't he?
He was. He was.
Jerry Cheevers, who was your favorite player growing up?
I think Terry Sawchuk.
Good choice. Yeah, good choice.
Ubi, are you still there?
Yeah, sure am.
Tell them the story about when you had the fight with Norm Foster.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. I thought I had taken boxing, when I was a kid in the basement of the church. We had a boxing club, and when I went to St. Mike's, Mr. Wonderful, we call him that, Norm Foster, because one day when he was dating this girl one time, he requested a song. And of course it was Mr. Wonderful. Well, I said to him, well, let's go in the gym. I thought maybe we fight a few rounds. And boy, oh boy, he beat the crap out of me. You know what? I should have had Reggie, my roommate, with me because Reggie would have taken care of him. Because Reggie Fleming was my roommate when I was at St. Mike's, and I can recall many games. Every time, if I'd go in on net and there was a whistle, then there'd be a scuffle, and everybody would pair off. And sure enough, Reggie would come in from the point, and he'd beat the hell out of the guy he's fighting, and then I'd be getting killed. In fact, my first fight was with Bobby Hull. And my first punch was to his ankles. So that didn't go too well. So Reggie, when he would come in, I remember I had to talk to him after the games. I say, Reggie, I said, don't come in there. I said, nothing's going to happen. It's just a melee, it was pushing. But he'd come in and he'd say, Ubi, I'm your roommate. I'm trying to help you. I said, you're not helping me. You're getting me killed. Oh, God.
Steve?
Yes, please.
I just wondered, we're talking about a lot of guys tonight, and I just wondered how the lads, the guys thought about Jim Gregory, who featured well in the history of the school and beyond, and what their thoughts were of Jim.
Dave Keon, you want to start that off?
Well, I met Jim. He started as, when I was playing Junior A, he started as a trainer and was the trainer 3 years. I remember my last year of junior, there was the three Gregory boys. There were Bruce and Dave Draper and myself. There was mumps going around the school. So they moved us out of residence to Jim's house. Wow. So we wouldn't get the mumps. And so we called ourselves the Gregory boys from that point on.
That's nice.
What a nice story. Jerry Cheevers, any memories of Jim Gregory?
Oh, I got a lot of memories of Jim. Jim was from Dunnville in the Niagara district, but like Dave said, he was our trainer. But I would add trainer / general manager at that time. In fact, he had a trainer, Norm Mackey was with him the year we won the cup there, and Jimmy did a lot of the administrative parts. And then I wasn't surprised that eventually he would be the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But I took myself as, I thought I was a pretty good pool shooter. I grew up in a pool hall in St. Catharines and everything. And so I kept challenging him. Well, we went down to, I never forget, a Young and Bloor. There's a pool hall there, and Jimmy Gregory and I went down there, and I don't think I got to make a shot. We played snooker for about 2 hours, and he kicked the 11 crap out of me. He was so good. He was a great hustler, Jimmy Gregory, and that was just one indication. And I'm not surprised that he, a trainer for us at St. Mike's, end up what he was, and also a high-profile guy in the National Hockey League.
Well, Dave Keon, he was GM of the Leafs when you were there, was he not?
He was a GM, yes. He when St. Mike's folded and they started the Metro League, he was involved with that. And then the Marlies got back in the OHA and he was the manager of that. So they won 2 Memorial Cups there. And then when Punch was relieved of his duties, he was made the GM of the Leafs. And he spent 10 years, I think, with them. Unfortunately, he was there when Ballard owned the team, and I don't think that he was allowed to do some of the things that he wanted to do.
No, that's for sure.
Question in the chat here, David, about
about Jim Gregory is that he was a hell of a football player too. He used to run with his knees up to his chin and try and run everyone over. And I was a grade 9 student and he was a senior student. And I think Bill Conway brought him over. He was doing his last cuts and he put 2 tackling dummies, and Jim Gregory would come at you and you'd have to tackle him. And if you winced, you got cut. If you didn't wince, you stayed on the team. And Jim Gregory would come at you. And that's what, I mean, Jim was our trainer too in that 61 team. He was the organizer. Father Bauer, we found out when Father Bauer had to move to Vancouver, we found envelopes full of money that he had got from exhibition games. We played in Hamilton and various places. He just put them in a drawer in an envelope and forgot about it. And we were helping him pack his stuff to go to Vancouver after the Memorial Cup. And there it was all there. So Jim helped organize Father Bauer, and what a career he made out of it.
Casey, do you want to come in and tell us about the relationship that Jim had with your dad?
Well, just they were very good friends, and I think at the time that my dad was hired to coach the Leafs, that was when Mr. Ballard was incarcerated. And my dad had to go to the prison to meet him, I guess. But it was Jim that, presented him with the papers and the actual contract, I think, at the time that he came to the Leafs to coach. And I just remember over the years that Jim's children played the piano, took lessons from a teacher that taught with our teacher, very close to our house, walking distance. So we would always see them at piano recitals and sometimes waiting to go in for lessons. And Jim always came to watch the kids play. And he was a wonderful supporter. He came from an area not far from where my dad grew up. And so there would often be events down in that part of the country, Port Dover, Simcoe, Dunville, down in that area. And so he and my dad would sometimes ride together to some of these charitable events. And just great friends for a very long time.
Was he a pallbearer at your dad's funeral?
Yes.
He was.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he got sick not long after that.
Yes.
He was not feeling well at the time, so that it was rough.
Casey, I know you got to scoot, but we're really grateful you could spend some time with us tonight.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. There have been some wonderful stories.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear from Jerry Odrowski.
Creek.
Jerry,
Trout Creek.
Yeah.
Jerry.
That's where Jerry was from. Trout Creek.
Yeah, he still is.
Keon, I love going to Rwanda to your rink, Keon. Hey, the hardest, I was a boxer, and the hardest I ever got hit was by Keon when I was bragging to him as a grade 9 idolizer of him. I said, Keon, I'm a boxer now. He says, yeah, what? Henry Apples or oranges? That was the hardest I ever got hit.
Oh.
And Smitty, January 4th, 76.
Soup's
January
on.
4th, 76. Hey?
Soup's on.
No, 10,400 on Arbor's horse at Lindell's in Detroit. You won
okay.
10,400 Windsor Raceway that
Oh, yeah.
Great night that night.
10,700.
Jerry, did you play with?
You gave 3 away before I met you.
You look great, Big O.
Hey, one other one I wanted to just mention. Is Forby still with us on the chat?
Yeah, I'm here.
Forby? Okay, Forby, I ran PEI back in '99, 132 miles rails for trails, and I ended up at the Chase on historical place in Tignish. And you coach in Tignish, and they still have your shoes. They want me to tell you to come and pick them up.
Talk about Tignish, I'll tell you a good one about that. Dave and us, I think there's a Horseshoe Tavern we went to see, Stompin' Tom.
Oh, Stompin' Tom.
Yeah, and Dave said he's from PEI, and I said, no, he's not. So anyway, we go there, and I got my back to him, and all of a sudden I hear the plywood going, and he said, little Davey Keon and this and that. So we came down. Davey said, where are you from? PEI. I said, what part? Skinner's Pond. Now, I didn't know where Skinner's Pond was, just about 400 people. If they're lucky, maybe 20 people live there. I said, where is it near? Tignish. I said, yeah, he's from the island.
Jerry, did you play with Dave Keon in Minnesota?
No.
You guys weren't teammates then?
WHA, he was in Cleveland.
No, you're talking to me?
No, Jerry Odrowski was Minnesota Fighting Saints.
Yeah.
No, I didn't play with Jerry.
Okay.
Minnesota, no.
But Jerry Cheevers, I want to ask, there's a question in here about the Summit Series that people talk less about. Not the one that we're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of next year, but the 74 series against the WHA teams. You played in that one, yes?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
What are your memories all these years later about that series?
Well, we were substantial underdogs after what happened in '72. That you know, that people finally realized the Russians were pretty good. And what I remember really is I remember two incidents. One is they scored a goal on me in Maple Leaf Garden. That was obviously before they went upstairs and everything. And it was a Canadian referee, and the puck went in and out. And someone said, "Oh, the Russians can't shoot," which was baloney. They could shoot as good as anyone. And I give a number 16 Petrov about an inch over my glove, and it went in and out like a rocket. And you know, we didn't know much about the Russians then, but I knew the referee. He was waving it off, so that's the end of it. And they're arguing. And I went to Petrov thinking he couldn't understand English, and I said, "You know, that was in, you know." He said, "You're damn right it was in." So I stopped talking to the Russians that time, and we scored a controversial goal in Game 7, which would have made it 3-2-1 or something like that, which would have given us I think Gordy got it actually, and which would have given Game 8 or something like that a chance to walk. You know, we only won one game. We had a couple of ties, but we scored a goal that would have allowed us to win the game. And as we did in Canada, they had a Russian, the whole Louis Dombrowski, the Russian ref. I knew they were going to count it, so we could have gone into Game 8 with a chance to maybe tie it. I'm not quite sure. Maybe at least to save face.
Wasn't that Bobby Hull who got that goal?
Yeah, it was Bobby Hull.
Maybe
yeah.
it was Bobby Hull.
Yeah.
Jerry, we
it
had
was Hull too.
Krylov and Tretiak and Yakushev on the Zoom, and the first thing they talked about was that goal that didn't count in Game 2. They still remember to this day.
I remember it too. I'll tell you a funny story, a quick story. We were flying in the WHA. We're flying from Edmonton to Montreal for some reason. I don't know why to go to Quebec City. And we're on commercial airlines, like we all did in those days. And I'm sitting next to a lady. And what do you do? What do you do? And she says, "Oh, I'm a photographer." I said, "Oh, great." And I do some sports. And she says, "In fact, I got very lucky." She says, "I took a picture of the puck going in and the Canadians by the Russians in that game." I'm sitting beside her. She has no idea who I am. And I said, "Well, I wasn't too happy with that picture." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because I was the goalie." And that was a small world, really. And but it was, believe me, and you know, I never thought the Russians could shoot, getting off the subject a little bit, but I found it the hard way. They can shoot pretty damn good.
They could
and
shoot
quick.
We're going to have a show on the 74 team. We're trying to gather the people now. We've got Rick Smith, Andre Lacroix, and hopefully you can join us too, Jerry. I don't know where it's going to happen, but we'll be doing it soon.
Jerry,
I'm available.
Great.
I saw just a few days ago, Jerry, your former teammate Bobby Schmotz died on his birthday.
Yeah, he was fighting pancreatic cancer. And I know very well you can't beat that. And he was a character, Bobby. He was a tough player, a very good penalty killer, had a great shot, and he had a little extra going for him too. He was very unpredictable out there, and I was sad. He was a good man.
Dave Keon, there's a question here about your days with the Whalers, what it was like to play with Gordie Howe. Got a story about that?
Oh, it was a treat to play with him, and I enjoyed it very much. I saw him do some things that you'd kind of question.
Like what?
To put it mildly. Gordie didn't suffer fools lightly on the ice, and as he told me once, he said, "I always like to be 2 up on everybody," he said. I said, "Why did you hit that guy?" He said, "I was 1 behind."
I'll tell you a quick story. Dave's team, the Fighting Saints, played the Cleveland Crusaders in the first game of the year in Minnesota, and they had the infamous Carlson brothers, and they had a pretty tough squad. And I happened to, we had a tough player in Jimmy Harrison, who was a Leaf at one time too, I believe. And anyway, I had cross-checked one of the Carlsons, and he come to me, and there's no way I was going in to him. So Jimmy Harris come in. To make a long story short, a Pier 4 erupted. It erupted, and I finally got out of the way. I was standing next to David. I said, Dave, with those guys, you better get used to this type of hockey. He said, this is nothing. You should have saw our inter squad game. Which I thought was one of the great lines of all time.
That's great. That's great.
Gordy.
Boy, that's fun.
Well, I'm going to have to go, Steve. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it very much.
This was a
Davey,
delight.
I got one question for Davey. Is O'Malley here? Is this true, Dave? That on your first year as a pro, you were doing some of Father Bauer's checking techniques on Gordie Howe, and he was in the corner, and you're going back and forth, and he was trying to wedge you out, and finally you pinned him. And he looked over his shoulder and he said, "Hey kid, remember the elbows come back fast."
No, I pushed.
Did that happen? Is that true?
I pushed him into the back of the net.
Oh, you did?
I put my hand up, and the elbow came back and it hit my hand. And he said, "Look out, kid, that elbow comes back awful fast." I said, "Yeah, I know it does."
Mr. Keon, we are so grateful for your participation tonight. This was truly a joy.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Night, Davey.
Nice to see you.
Take care.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Listen,
Well, on a night
Steve-
like tonight, when we're talking about St. Mike's, I got to drop the best trivia question of all time on you all. Someone's going to know this. Who's the only head coach in hockey history to have won a Stanley Cup, an Allen Cup, and a Memorial Cup?
Joe Primo.
Right on.
Way to go, Ricky.
That was a tough one.
Isn't that a good question?
Dave Draper
Joe
won
Primo.
win a Memorial Cup as a player, as a coach, and general manager. Dave Draper, and Stanley Cup and World Junior Gold medals.
Wow.
Dave Draper,
Cool.
Well, Steve, you've really
player,
done,
coach, GM.
That's very cool. Jerry Cheevers, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just getting ready. I'm living in Florida, about an hour past my bedtime.
Oh, okay. Well, I got a trivia question for you then, Jerry, before we go. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. What happened on your first birthday?
Pearl Harbor.
You got it. You knew this guy was going to lead a dramatic life when the Pearl Harbor invasion happened on his first birthday.
Yeah. And the bad part about it, my father had been at war for 2 years when I was born.
Huh. Wow.
Oh, you think about it.
He's joking.
Yeah. Anyway, hey, thank you. I enjoyed that, and I'm glad. Smitty, I love you.
Love you,
I don't know if you're
Cheesy.
still there, Act.
Yeah.
And Rick, nice talking to you. Terry, Ubi,
Take care.
Forby. I'll see you. Forby, I think that tournament's in August. It's moved back. Am I not right?
Okay, I'll see you there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Bobby's coming with us this year.
Okay, good. That's
So-
great.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for that. Good evening.
Thank you, Jerry Cheevers. That was
Jerry,
wonderful.
All right, thank you guys. I love
Good,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Hey, Jerry,
Bye.
See you, Rick.
Nucci.
Don Joyce has a
Nucci.
computer. He wanted to be on tonight, but I
Nucci.
forgot to send him the link. So
Who's that?
Don Joyce.
Oh, he'll call me tomorrow. Don't worry about it.
Okay, he'll probably call me too. Okay.
Nice man.
Yeah.
well,
Yes, good man.
this whole thing is available.
All right. Good luck, Smitty. Good luck Sunday. First race, right?
First race, Golden Gate.
You know what? When
Thanks.
Smitty and I used to go to the races, you know what our philosophy was? And this is the truth too. We said, I hope I break even. We could sure use the money.
That's for sure.
All right, guys. See you later. Thank
Good
you.
night, Jerry.
Oh,
That
good
was
night.
great. That was great.
Oh, yeah.
This whole program's available on the St. Michael's website. Is that correct, Larry?
The first part is, but this is being recorded right now.
It's being recorded.
If we can get
Hello?
that to you.
we can get it to, we'll talk to Stephanie about getting it available for everybody
Yes, it will be available, but not until next week.
next
Oh,
week.
It goes into the archives.
Correct.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
Confidential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Suzanne, did you have a good time tonight, Suzanne?
I had a great time. It was great sitting back and listening and thinking about a lot of great memories that even Casey was talking about. I had the pleasure of being able to do some filming with Ed Kelly and going to when he was inducted or his number was honored down at Detroit. That was really wonderful. And Casey coming to those with his the wife and being on the Ontario Sports Hall of Fame. She and her mother came to the gala the year and a bit ago that we were able to actually have it. And it was just wonderful to hear that because there was a lot of great stories Red told me about Papa when he coached him and
We saw some nice pictures of your papa tonight.
yeah, they were really lovely. Very nice. There's, the one that's behind me as well. And it's always great. Going over to my grandfather's home as kids down in their basement in the Kingsway on the wall. And there's probably many different people that I can't even begin to tell you, all these 8x10s or 8x11s that he had framed there from all the different teams when he started to coach, right? With it was UCC or St. Mike's, and then, having been on the board. So it was really great to sit back and listen. I know Papa missed coaching a lot of the gentlemen that would have been on tonight. But it was very memorable, and also remembering Papa and Nana having EJ. You to appreciate this. Your uncle would go and stay there. He had a standing room at their house when he was in Japan and going back and forth and didn't have a place so much that was solid. So they just opened up a room for him, and he'd bring a suitcase in and go downstairs, and so there's a great friendship between Papa and your uncle.
Was there's a few names in hockey that resonate straight through the family tree, and one of them is Primo and Bauer, and they're definitely connected. So
Having trouble
Bauer.
hearing you.
He said two names that resonate through hockey: Primo and Bauer.
Yeah, they were a pretty great team.
The respect they had for one another and how
Yeah.
they shared.
Yes.
Was neat because FD did it through the next generation.
Yes, and it's interesting too. You were chatting about earlier on StreamYard, and it really resonated with me. Is they were both very strong, as my grandmother was. People met your uncle and my Papa, very strong men of faith, and I think that resonated a lot in the way that they approached, whether it be Papa on the ice or on the ice as a coach. And the things you had to say about that were really touched me because that was the way things were in our family as well. So I hear you. And I think that was really important because it's about your character and it's about the way then you communicate with others. And the hockey was the medium, right? That in order to be able to deliver the way you respond and how you are with people, right? And so I really appreciated that a lot, EJ.
Thanks.
This was some night.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, great night.
Major props to all you St. Mike's guys, Larry and Peter.
Yeah.
Joe.
Thank you.
Laura, Paul, of course. Phenomenal
Steve,
night.
Steve, you did an
Stephanie, our
outstanding
leader,
job.
Stephanie.
A great job,
Stephanie,
Steve.
of course.
Stephanie, for sure.
And Stephen Klein.
Is EJ still on?
Yes.
The 1934 team, the Memorial Cup team, there were two Bauers. One was Bobby. Was the other one Father Dave?
No, it would have been Gene, I think. It was
Okay.
Gene no, it was Frank.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I
So my
I'd like to-
dad was the first Bauer to live past 50. And those guys were all great athletes, right? And they all at 49, he lost his dad and 3 brothers. So it, you kind of live for the moment. And, but Bobby was definitely the influence, and Father Dave, was.
I have the list here. It was Frank.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hey, let's not forget Glenn Dreyfus out in Seattle. Major
Yes.
props to him for all the great video and
Oh, there
producing
we
this
are.
thing tonight.
And
There's the
thanks
shot.
to Steve Paikin for doing such a phenomenal
great.
job. And Steve, Walter Cronkite never did sports. You got one over on him.
Great job.
That was a fun night.
That's really good.
That was a fun night. I'll tell you what, guys, we had the Chinese ambassador to Canada on the agenda the other night. And I think I prepped about 10 times harder for this than I did for that.
Well, you did a great job.
Well, that's smart.
You knew your stuff.
You did a great job.
A lot to catch up on.
Problems there, Steve?
What's that?
Did you fix the problems between the two nations?
Yeah, it's all better now. I got it all resolved. Yeah.
You did a great job, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Not at all. It was what a pleasure to participate. My goodness. I mean, just
Yeah.
Great to see Ricky and Barry, and I haven't seen those guys in a little while, eh? And boy,
Are
I
you a
can't believe-
Hamilton boy, Steve?
eh?
yeah.
Are you a Hamilton boy, Steve?
You betcha. I loved all those stories about Pat Quinn, who I remember from back in the day.
Yeah. Well, your dad ran that place on First Street, did he? Was it Firth?
Ferguson Avenue.
Ferguson. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was ages ago.
Yeah, good family.
He's 87 now.
Wow.
Hey, good
Yeah.
to see you, Barry. You look different now since you
Yeah,
retired.
well, it's COVID look. It's a COVID look, Paul.
Why don't you ask him?
Yeah. It's really good to have a chance to get in on this. And I know Pat just loved St. Mike's. He talked about it all the time. And I heard the name Father Flanagan probably all through my whole life. That's all he ever talked about was
Sure,
Father
ask him.
Flanagan at St. Mike's.
Come on and ask.
You know, and I hear those names and it sends chills up your spine, to think about the fact that Pat didn't have an opportunity to play for St. Mike's. And I know it was one of the big things, one of the big regrets in his life was that he hated Detroit after that. He just hated and despised them over the fact that they wouldn't let him pay for St. Mike's. And it was not a good thing.
He made the yearbook as a football team.
He's a football player.
I know. Yeah.
I found a copy of that book for $1 or something like that at one of the bookstores and sent it out to him. So I think he really enjoyed having that. Yeah.
Barry, I remember a moment at the Harbor 60 Steakhouse. I don't know how long ago this is, maybe 15 years ago. And I'm talking to a couple of university students who are there at some reception having to do with a hockey thing. I'm talking to a couple of University of Western Ontario students, and we get talking, and I look over my shoulder, and there's Pat Quinn over there. And I talk to these guys about the fact that Pat Quinn knocked out Bobby Orr in a game. And they said, get out of town. No, he didn't. Nobody knocked out Bobby Orr. I said, how can you guys be hockey fans and you don't know about this, about the fact that Pat Quinn hit Bobby Orr with his head down in a playoff game and knocked him cold? Yeah. The guys look at me and said, you are so full of it. I said, boys, follow me. Turned around. We walk over to Pat. Pat has got this look on his face like, what do these jerks want? And I said, Mr. Quinn, these two gentlemen here from University of Western Ontario don't believe that you knocked out Bobby Orr in a hockey game. Now, am I lying about this or what? And Pat's expression on his face went from, boy, are you guys a bunch of idiots, to, and he regaled us with the details for the next 10 minutes, and it was a wonderful moment.
I just got to tell you one short story about Pat. And I was involved in Burlington, the Burlington International Games. And I convinced Pat after his first year with Toronto to come down and speak to a breakfast that we had every year to raise money to do the games between Burlington, Vermont, and Ontario. So Pat gets up there. We got a whole table full of our family. My mom's there. Pat stands up. I think it's his first time speaking, really. And he gets up and he starts telling this story about how his first game with Toronto and that he let a goal in. And after the game, he's sitting there with his head down, and King Clancy walks up. He looks down. He's Clancy's broken, And he looks down, he looks back up, he says, I guess I should have kept my legs closed, Cassie. And he says, no, son, your mother should have. My mother was sitting beside me and she slipped under the table. My mother was never so embarrassed in her whole life.
A good Irish joke.
That's a
Oh,
good one.
Irish joke. Anyway.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that was Clancy though. I think that was a true story. Anyway, thanks so much, guys, for including me. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Bart. Very.
Steve
hope
too,
to see you
yeah.
again.
All right. Good helmet, boy. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Thanks
Good night.
everyone as well.
Everybody.
Good night.
Thanks,
Hey,
Leonard. Bye-bye.
Dennis Gibbon, good to see you too.
Good to see you, Barry.
Paul.
Thanks for organizing. We're going to do the Bill Barocco story because it's the 70th anniversary of the goal. That's in 2 weeks. And we have some
Wow.
prizes there too.
Who are you going to get on for that, Paul?
Well, we're going to have, geez, the nephew, hopefully.
Wow.
A fellow from Timmins. We're going to have, we're going to tell the story about the puck. We're going to tell about a lot of things. And we haven't fully done the agenda yet, but we're working on it.
Didn't Kevin write a book about that?
1 year.
He did, yeah.
Paul, correct me. Haven't they built a monument out in the bush
We'll
commemorating?
find that out in 2 weeks. There's a big
Yeah.
sign in Timmins that Mark Farrow, who's helping organize it, he had raised some money to get it built up in Timmins. They had a ceremony and everything, so it'll be interesting.
They put buttons out 1 year with the number 5 on them, right?
Yeah, they did. And
think
you
I
know, they
got
kept, in the first game of the season after he was lost, they still kept his name in the program lineup. First game of the season, they still thought they'd find him. Yeah.
There's a book written on him. It's a good read. You recall the name of it, Paul?
Yeah, there's 2 books written on him, but and also a couple of documentaries.
Right.
Yeah, and
And a song by Tragically Hip.
Right?
Yeah.
Did they ever find any remains?
Well, they found the remnants of the plane,
Yeah.
but they never ever mentioned whether they found any remains or not. I don't know.
well, they found the plane just after they won their next cup 11 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's a whole story to that. In fact, the fellow who was flying over, he just spotted something shiny and he didn't know what it was. He went back to the station or whatever, and he just mentioned it. And someone who was around at the time in 1951 says, "You saw something shiny?" And he knew right away it was Barocco's plane because they could never find it, no matter how hard they searched back in 51.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Anybody here?
Thanks,
at
great
that
job.
game?
Thanks, Barry.
Anybody here at that game? 51? Who's old enough, eh? No.
No. Joe Yonder's mother-in-law was there.
106, yeah.
I want to have someone who was actually at the game to talk to us.
That'd be
Well, Pete
something.
Conacher was. We will get Pete. And
Boy.
there's no players left. We just lost Howie Meeker. He was the last one. But what we're going to try to do is bring Jerry McNeil's son, David, on. Because he wrote a book about his dad who let in that goal. We're going to try to get him on again.
Right.
And we'll cover a lot of bases.
That'd be good.
Yeah, wait to hear the puck story though. That's interesting too.
Thanks very much, guys. I'm off to
Okay,
bed.
thanks, Joe, for all your
Yeah.
help.
No, it was
Hey,
great.
Well done,
everybody.
Joe. Thank you.
Pleasure, pleasure.
Yeah.
Good
Joe.
night, guys.
Thanks, Larry. Nice
Yeah,
job.
thank you. Till our next project.
We'll see you, Brian. Brian? See
Yeah,
ya.
thanks.
Been a
God
great
bless.
evening.
Yeah.
Good stuff, guys.
Night, everyone.
Until next time.
Okay,
Yeah.
take care, Steve.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Fabulous time.
Grazie,
Yeah.
Lorenzo.
Great
That's-
program. Thanks,
Thank-
everyone.
Ciao.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. It was a great evening.
Yeah, and St. Mike's has invited us back to do this in person when the lockdown is over eventually. Just got an invite from the athletic director.
That would be good if we all can get together again.
You guys
did a great job.
That's good. Fantastic. Great job, Larry.
Yeah, thanks.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.